Chapter 11:21. Half an hour later, Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu came up with a temporary solution. First, they will promote overseas purchasing in the US. They will tell the rest of the world, especially the English-speaking audiences, that there are tens of millions of English versions of World Faction on sale in China. It's not only the Chinese who buy overseas products. Foreigners can also buy Chinese products. If you are in a hurry and want to see the secrets of World Faction, don't hesitate to pick up your phone and call the purchasing hotline. Shunfeng oversees direct plane delivery to your home. Other than that, you can also log into Amazon. There are many global merchants waiting for you there. This is knowledge, and the earlier you buy it, the earlier you can stand out from the crowd. What? Someone thinks the $10 postage is too expensive? This must be because your pursuit of acting is not strong enough, and you are not loyal enough to the world's best actor. Lu Xiaoyang reported this idea to Qin Guang, and Qin Guang did not comment on it. He will sell as much as he can first. The cost of shipping by air was indeed too high, and the company couldn't afford it. If the cost was shared among all the consumers, and the consumers had to bear it themselves, it was indeed a good solution. However, the quantity should not be too large. Selling hundreds of thousands of sets from overseas was probably the limit. Fine. Let's do it this way. I have no objections, but this is not my main idea. You all go ahead. After hanging up the call with Lu Xiaoyang, Qin Guang secretly called Tang Xiaokai about this matter. Tang Xiaokai's reply is the same. It is not difficult to ship the goods over. The difficult part is how to legally sell the goods in North America. Lu Xiaokai can help by using his connections with the U.S. Department of Commerce. But the results are not guaranteed. Their international friends were very strange. When they found you pleasing to the eye, or when you were selling rare resources such as rare earth minerals, they would never talk about anti-dumping with you. No matter how many you bring, they will buy the same amount without any hesitation. But if it is a finished product or a cultural publication, they will have thousands of rules to explain to you. It is hard to deal with. No matter who it was, they didn't care about connections, they only cared about money. 10 million sets of Wuxia's publications were shipped to the US, which meant that the US publishing and printing market would be hit hard. It meant that the US's GDP of hundreds of millions of US dollars would disappear out of thin air. The United States also has workers, and American workers also have to eat and drink. With so much GDP evaporated, the businesses here would lose a lot of revenue. Their publishing and printing industries would be affected, and many people would lose a lot of income. This was a very long-term effect. No matter which country in the world, the management of cultural publications such as audiovisual products and books was very strict. There were many reasons for this, but it could be summed up in one word: there's no way. After hanging up the call with Tang Xiaokai, Qin Guang began to rack his brains for a solution. He waited until the afternoon, but still couldn't come up with any effective methods to deal with this matter. On the other side, although he looked confident and everything was under control, the four Vajras of the Qingguang group did not stop showing their prowess. After thinking about it, there was really only one other way besides smuggling. This method sounded simple, but it could be summed up in 5 words: the boss has the final say. At noon, Qin Guang dyed his hair back to black. After a long struggle, he didn't really care. However, he had received a call from his mother, who asked him about yesterday's Romeo and Juliet. His mother, Feng Rong, was very satisfied with his performance. Just before hanging up the phone, she threw him this sentence: "Oh, that hair of yours is a wig, right? I'm so nervous. Let me tell you, the youngest son of Auntie Lu next door dyed his hair a few days ago. His feces were yellow, and he looked neither like a man nor a woman. He was beaten up by his father, screaming like a pig being slaughtered. It was really miserable." "Ah, wig, of course it's a wig. How could I possibly dye my hair? Even if I shaved my head, I can't dye my hair." Qin Guang pinched his head of golden hair, which was the same as little Li's, and lied with his eyes wide open. This was clearly a naked threat from Mom. After hanging up the phone, he went straight to the hairdressing salon not far from the Flemington Hotel. Under normal circumstances in the North American service industry, there was no one to serve you during lunch breaks. However, Qin Guang had a big face. The television in the hairdressing salon was broadcasting a replay of the UBC television station. Moreover, Qin Guang was waving a shiny HSD in his hand, so he decided to work overtime without any explanation. More than 2 hours before the handover ceremony, Qin Guang dressed up and arrived early at the Wuxia Theater in Hollywood. He met up with Donald Joshtan and James Watson Sr., who were hosting the ceremony. Originally, President Fred had wanted to come first, but considering that he still had to be the one to invite Qin Guang into the International Film Hall of Fame tomorrow, he decided to avoid arousing suspicion today. Donald walked out of the meeting room. "Mr. Qin, many of your friends are waiting for you at the party over there. Some of them will arrive later. Today is a very important day." Qin Guang nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Joshtan, for your help, and thank you, Mr. Watson. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to invite so many big shots." On the way here, Qin Guang had received the guest list sent to him by the staff of the Wuxia Theater. Compared to the incomparably cold premiere 10 days ago, today was like a starry night. The difference was like heaven and earth. Just by counting the names on the list and placing them on the paper, one would be greeted by a dazzling light that could blind one's eyes. For this handover ceremony, the dignified owner of the Wuxia Theater, a veteran of the North American film industry, Donald Joshtan, had gone all out. He had used his connections to sell his face and reputation. Not only that, other senior members of the Film Association, including James Sr., Foreman, Damon, and even Malfoy Bentler, had come forward to make up for the cold shoulder they had given to Qin Guang previously and to repair the relationship between the two parties. After Donald had issued an open invitation to Qin Guang, they had all come up with ideas and made phone calls to rope him in. With these people's qualifications, those who could make them call to invite him would definitely not be small fries. Other than a few people who were all over the world or those who had matters to attend to, basically everyone who received the call would give face to them. There was even a situation where this happened to a good crew and they had to stop filming for the next 2 days. The director brought the entire cast to Los Angeles, planning to attend Qin Guang's handover ceremony today and then attend Qin Guang's public lecture after the ceremony at the World Film Hall of Fame the next day. Stopping filming for 2 days would, of course, result in a huge increase in the cost of filming. The explanation given by these directors to the investors was simple. In the ancient Wuxia saying, "Sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting firewood." They did not come here just to support Qin Guang. Their main purpose was to attend Qin Guang's public lecture and see if they could get their hands on a few copies of The World's Faction that were hard to come by on the market. They did all this to improve the acting skills of the main cast and also to improve their understanding of movies as a director. Everyone's ultimate goal was to make the movie better. "What? Boss, why don't we buy The World's Faction ourselves and wait for the video materials for his public lecture?" "Stop fooling around. First of all, where are we going to buy The World's Faction now? Rob it? Secondly, can the effect of watching the video materials be compared to listening to the lecture live? Do you still want our movie to be good or not? Look at women. There's nothing special about the script and the main cast. It's even in Mandarin with English subtitles, but what about the box office performance? Why don't we learn from them? Do you still want to get rich?" With such a good reason, the investors could not say anything and could only let it go. There were already 3 complete main cast teams here, and there would be 5 more before the ceremony started. Old James patted Qin Guang's shoulder happily. "Don't thank me. This is our duty and what we should do. Let's go and say hello to everyone." Surrounded by the 2 of them, Qin Guang went straight to the large banquet hall in the Wuxia Theater. Looking around, there was indeed a gathering of celebrities. There were familiar names everywhere, huddled together and whispering to each other. There were people from the entertainment industry, celebrities from the business world, and even some big shots in the political world. Seeing that Qin Guang had arrived, these people turned their heads and waved at Qin Guang enthusiastically. Basically, the National Film Association represented the mainstream attitude of the European and American mainstream towards Qin Guang. Qin Guang had gained the recognition of these people, which was equivalent to breaking into the mainstream values of North America in one fell swoop. Qin Guang had not officially won the Oscar, and the Best Actor award had not been settled yet. It had not been easy for him to make a comeback, so for the time being, he had to save some face for these people who had destroyed his stage. Even if they wanted to settle the score later, he had to endure it first and wait until everything was settled. With this thought in mind, he was also very enthusiastic, greeting everyone who came. The scene looked very harmonious and warm. As for these people who were holding champagne to toast him, Qin Guang drank as much as they came. He was very vigorous. As a dignified martial sage, he would not even faint when taking a bath in erguotu, not to mention champagne. In the process of these European and American celebrities contacting Qin Guang, they also changed their previous prejudices against him. How was he arrogant? How was he arrogant? With such high artistic achievements, he was so young, yet he was so polite and well-spoken. How rare was that? This was completely different from the reputation that he had shown in the past. It was not at all like what others had criticized him in the past, that he was arrogant after achieving success and looked down on others. He was both gentlemanly and calm. In particular, his aristocratic medieval English accent was simply charming, causing the eyes of many socialites to light up. There were also some international friends such as the French, German, and Spanish, who had mastered several languages, and English was only a second language. Out of curiosity they spoke the languages of their respective countries with Chen Guang, but Chen Guang accepted them all. He was able to communicate with people in every language, and his pronunciation was as accurate as that of a national broadcaster. These European and American celebrities had never seen such a demeanor, and they were all stunned. His skills were extraordinary, but his attitude was amiable, neither servile nor overbearing, and he had a graceful demeanor. It had completely refreshed the inherent image of the Chinese in their hearts. Admittedly, when he had first come to the United States, the heroic words that he had said were a little arrogant, but in retrospect, he was clearly low-key and humble. If they had his ability and acting skills, they would probably want to move the Oscar to their own home. After chatting with everyone for a while, Chen Guang found a table with old James and sat down. Along the way he had heard many people complain about the problem of wanting to buy World's Faction, including many directors and professors of film schools who wanted to buy World's Faction Performing Arts in bulk as teaching materials, but they could not buy it at all. They urged Chen Guang to change the current situation. Chen Guang was also heartbroken. 10 million sets were placed in his house and countless people were waving their US dollars, waiting to pay for them, but they could not buy them. He was anxious. Sigh. Chen Guang let out a long sigh. Old James asked, "Mr. Chen, why are you sighing?" Chen Guang changed the topic. "It's nothing. By the way, Mr. Watson, how many days until the Hollywood primaries?" Old James thought that he was worried about the Oscar and comforted him. "There's still half a month, but don't worry, Mr. Chen. It'll be fine." Chen Guang asked again, "What about the award?" Old James looked left and right like a thief, then whispered into Chen Guang's ear, "Mr. Chen, I'll tell you about this for now. Please don't tell anyone else." "Okay, I'm listening." "No problem." Chen Guang asked again, then, "Can we announce the news in advance?" Based on past experience, the normal Oscar announcement would be in March. There were still more than 2 months left and he was really anxious. Old James shook his head like a rattled drum. "That won't do. There has never been such a precedent for the Oscars. And you know, although the jury has been criticized all these years, we really have a fair and open vote every time. Before the people from PricewaterhouseCoopers hand the envelope to the guest presenter, and the guest presenter opens the envelope in front of the global audience, even the current Fred or the past me will not know who will win. Is that so? Sigh, then there's no other way." Chen Guang sighed again and stopped struggling. He knew that he was being a bit too much. He had already done it, but he still had to wait for more than 2 months in vain. This made him very sad. After waiting for more than 2 hours, this long-awaited and exceptionally grand ceremony was finally completed successfully under the watchful eyes of everyone. After the ceremony, it was naturally a grand reception. This was also a daily social event in Europe and the United States, but it was not broadcast to the public. There was no doubt that Chen Guang was still the focus of the crowd. Today was a festival that belonged to him. Chen Guang socialized with people with a heavy heart, but not many people could see that he was full of sadness. Finally, around 9 o'clock in the evening, someone finally came from outside. This person's identity made his eyes light up. Dwayne Brown, the director of the National Bureau of Publishing, came side by side with President Fred of the Motion Picture Association. Fred had just finished his work at the association and happened to have an appointment with Dwayne, his elementary school classmate who had come to Los Angeles for business. In China, the director of the National Bureau of Publishing was roughly equivalent to the level of a deputy minister in China. He was on the same level as Chen Guang before he resigned. After Director Brown arrived, many people greeted him. After some simple greetings, he stood in front of Chen Guang, led by President Fred. Chapter 11:22. "Mr. Chen, let me introduce you. This is my elementary school classmate, Dwayne Brown, the director of the United States Publishing Administration. Dwayne, do you need me to introduce you to Mr. Chen?" Director Brown pinched his chin and looked at Chen Guang with a smile. He extended his hand enthusiastically. "Mr. Chen, nice to meet you." Chen Guang was overjoyed and squeezed Director Brown's hand. "What the F***ck, what is this? A heavenly soldier descending from the heavens? Could it be that my hidden skill is the legendary lucky star and I get what I lack? Sure enough, I have the protagonist's halo. It's my destiny." The more he thought about it, the more satisfied he was, and the harder he squeezed Director Brown's hand. Director Brown's hand was squeezed tightly, and he swayed it back and forth. However, Qin Guang only shook hands with him and did not speak. Director Brown looked up and found that Qin Guang's eyes were as bright as the stars in the night sky. He obviously wanted to eat him. What was going on? He had never heard of this great artist from Wuxia, Mr. Qin, who was a great scholar, having such tendencies. Mr. Qin? Director Brown reminded him with a red face and tried to pull his hand out. However, with Qin Guang's strength, it was impossible for Dwayne Brown to break free. Qin Guang reacted first. Haha, Mr. Brown, I'm sorry, I forgot myself. I'm very happy to meet you. No, I'm very, very happy. About half an hour later, Dwayne Brown finally understood why Qin Guang had lost his composure. Qin Guang was more than 10 times more enthusiastic toward him than anyone else. He chased after him the whole time, chatting with him whenever he had the chance. Finally, his fox's tail was exposed. One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. Director Brown also understood this principle from Wuxia, so he simply asked directly. Qin Guang knew that it was difficult to do such a big thing under the table with the way things were done in Europe and the United States. It was impossible for 10 million sets of publications to flow into America without causing a commotion, and it was impossible that it had nothing to do with the director of the United States Publishing Administration. It was unrealistic to expect Director Brown, whom he had just met, to take some money and secretly stir up trouble. China was fighting corruption and so was Europe and the US. Brown would not take the risk of being imprisoned and offend those publishing and printing companies who were trying to take advantage of him. These companies were backed by large media groups. Touching their money was equivalent to touching their lives. In the democratic land, the influence of business owners and large financial groups on the political world was even stronger than in Wuxia. So, Qin Guang simply said it in front of everyone. First, he talked about how shameless those unscrupulous printing companies were. Then he asked Director Brown if he could sell books from China here. Brown shook his head vigorously. That's impossible. Mr. Qin, I will never agree to your request. Heaven knows how serious the protests will be. It will be fiercely boycotted by the Amalgamated Publishing Union. Not to mention me, even the president doesn't have such a right. Qin Guang looked at this guy and thought to himself. He really wanted to force him into a PY deal. Aren't you talking nonsense? Of course, I know that. I'm asking you to see if there are any loopholes in the system that I can exploit. President Fred, who was next to him, interrupted. Dwayne, is there no other way? I think Mr. Chen's idea is very good. You don't know this, but more than 2/3 of the people in the Film Association have not been able to buy a copy of World's Pie, let alone ordinary people. Those publishing and printing companies are violating the law of the market and maliciously raising prices. They are hindering the progress of civilization. On the other side, the dean of the Southern California Academy of Motion Picture Arts nodded. President Fred is right. If it weren't for the fact that we don't want to profane knowledge, the students in our school would want to infringe and make copies themselves. This matter has made us very miserable. As far as I know, it's not just me. Many film and television universities in the US are calling for the same thing. The dean of the Los Angeles University School of Performing Arts also poked his head in from the side. It's not just you. The students in ordinary universities are also very anxious. This morning, 2 students from our school's physics school fought over a copy of World's Pie. Seeing that his international friends were speaking up for him, Qin Guang struck while the iron was hot. Director Brown looked. These are the voices of the masses. Those companies that are asking for sky-high prices have simply lost their conscience. If it weren't for them raising the prices crazily to the point of making us lose money, we would have satisfied everyone's needs long ago. You also know that my World's Pie's price is very low, and there is almost no profit. Other similar academic monographs on the market start at $150. Look at mine. I have no intention of relying on publishing to make money, but they still want to suck my blood. This hurts me so much. That's right. Evil capitalist entrepreneurs. A shameless businessman who has lost his conscience for money and stinks of money. For their own interests, they are harming civilization and art. We can't let them succeed. Hearing the criticism from the people around him, Qin Guang nearly forgot that he was in the United States. Those that weren't in the know might even think that he was in the Paris Commune from decades ago. How great was the sentiment of the Soviet Union? They were all allies. Dwayne Brown was besieged. President Fred did not expect Qin Guang to stir up trouble with just a few words. He tried to smooth things over and ease the atmosphere. Dwayne, after all, Mr. Chin has just left his handprint on the wall with great figures like Chaplin and Martin Luther King. Otherwise, given his great achievements, is there any special channel to consider? Director Brown felt helpless. Okay, I have an idea. We can try to list the world's performing arts as a UNESCO intangible cultural heritage, and then put this monograph into a special channel for academic introduction. This way we can avoid the relevant regulations of the General Administration of Publishing and the Ministry of Commerce, but we will still have to pay a considerable amount of taxes to compensate the publishing industry. World Intangible Cultural Heritage. Qin Guang's eyes lit up. That's possible. The taxes can't be higher than the cost of printing in North America, right? He really wanted to take a selfie with his phone and post it on Weibo. Accompanying the text, Living World Cultural Heritage. The taxes shouldn't exceed $100 million, but it's very difficult to become a world cultural heritage, Mr. Qin. Director Brown said again. Qin Guang asked, why is it difficult? Director Brown shrugged. You know, the approval of world cultural heritage is very strict. Irma Watson, who had been eavesdropping, finally couldn't help but interrupt. Is it because Mr. Qin is still alive so it can't be considered a heritage? Shut up, Irma. James Sr. covered Irma Watson's mouth. Qin Guang felt that Irma's words made sense and he couldn't refute them at all. He felt that it was necessary to hang himself and make the heritage a real one. Well, the price was a little too high. It was a big loss. Qin Guang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then what should I do? Director Brown thought for a moment. How about this, Mr. Qin? Don't you have a public lecture tomorrow? You can apply to UNESCO now and I'll arrange it at the same time. You'll be teaching here and an expert from the headquarters will evaluate it online. After that, we'll hold a week-long global public vote, and the final online public vote and expert review will be considered. What do you think? No problem. President Fred interrupted. But Mr. Qin, how are the preparation of your materials? Won't this be a little too much pressure for you to teach? Qin Guang waved his hand. This is nothing. It's a piece of cake. After discussing with everyone, they disbanded at around 10 p.m. Before leaving, Qin Guang counted on his fingers. The whole process that Director Brown said would take about 8 or 9 days. But this wasn't important. He could start in China tonight. Regardless of the consequences, whether it would succeed or not, he had to start pulling people in. As long as Dwayne Brown made an opening, it meant that things could be done. It was better than the previous situation where he had no idea where to start. According to this man's words, it seemed that the United UNESCO was something that the US government could deeply interfere with? Forget it. This was a little complicated. Now that the old man was out of the picture, there was no need to care about these details. Back at the Flemington Hotel, Qin Guang first asked Lu Xiaoyang to inform Yu Hong not to ask or say anything. Find a ship now, the kind that could pull 10,000 tons and was extremely fast. It would be best if it could ride the wind and waves with sparks and lightning along the way, and sail at a speed of 70 knots. Well, this wasn't very realistic. China's warships could reach this speed, but the US would not agree. The old men had their own opinions. Finally, Yu Hong set his sights on a luxury cruise ship that had just completed repairs at the port of embarkation and happened to be vacant. It could reach a speed of more than 30 knots. The cost of making such a cruise ship go straight from China's port of embarkation to Los Angeles was as high as millions of dollars, but it was not a problem. It wasn't until the ship was ready that Qin Guang could set off the day after tomorrow at the latest that he felt at ease. He immediately went online and was very satisfied with the almost one-sided public opinion on the internet and TV. After these days of crazy tossing and turning, there was the amazing performance in Brosnan's Café, the perfect interpretation of Romeo and Juliet, followed by the 1900 Wave March, followed by the Wall of Signatures, which was the first wall where almost no more candidates were added. Coupled with the continuous rise of women and the increasing reputation of Qin Guang's reputation was rapidly rising, both domestically and internationally. The international clamor to directly award the Best Actor Oscar to Qin Guang was also getting louder and louder. It had only taken him half a month to completely crush The Sunshine Man and July in Florence, which had taken nearly half a year to warm up and invest so much time and energy in the promotion, not to mention the other competitors in the same period. Faced with the social media comments praising him one after another, Qin Guang was so addicted to the likes that he couldn't extricate himself. This was a movie lover with attitude. What kind of situation is this? President Fred and old James are really not in the mood. Why the hell are they voting? If you're a man, you should just give me the Best Actor Oscar. Oh, look at this. He glanced at William Jones's speech that the system had automatically recommended to him. After seeing Qin Guang's Romeo and Juliet live, I couldn't help but become his fanatic fan. I admit that I have been disrespectful to him in the past, and I feel uneasy about it. But I can't deny that I have worked hard for many years to be recognized by the Oscars. This is a dream that I have established since I was 5 years old. This time after filming The Sunshine Man, I almost thought that I had half a hand on the Oscars' legs. But now I've changed my mind. I even want to withdraw from the competition right now, even if the nominations have not yet begun. This year's Oscar can only belong to the Chinese Qin Guang, the greatest international performing artist. Not long after, another competitor, Ben Affleck, also straightforwardly reposted William Jones's tweet. Qin Guang was instantly speechless. Back then these two guys had poured dog blood on his face. If it weren't for the fact that they definitely couldn't beat him, they would have probably fought back then. At today's autograph ceremony, these two didn't show up. Apparently they had returned to Los Angeles together. Qin Guang had thought that the admiration in these two's eyes the night before was fake. He didn't expect them to suddenly do this on social media. Less than 20 minutes later, they seemed to have reached an agreement after an urgent discussion. The official Twitter accounts of Sunshine and July, including the two main leads, William and Bent, as well as the respective social media accounts of the directors of the two movies, all updated with explosive news at the same time. Sunshine and July officially announced that they would withdraw from this year's Oscar competition. Qin Guang couldn't believe it himself. So straightforward? You guys probably know that you're going to lose for sure and are afraid of embarrassing yourself, so you might as well just accept your fate, right? The sudden decision of the two big Oscars once again set off a wave of public opinion. Qin Guang didn't pay any more attention to it. Instead, he returned to his bed and lay comfortably until the next morning. Before falling asleep, he couldn't help but think the other 10 or so competitors this year are a little thick-skinned. If I were you guys, I would admit defeat along with Sunshine. Those stronger than you guys are all cowering. At least you guys have some self-awareness. Let me become the uncrowned king as soon as possible. At least I'll be able to get my hands on the statue first. That way I won't have to wait anxiously, right? The next morning, Qin Guang woke up early. He was washing up when he received a call from Dwayne Brown. After an intense night of work, UNESCO finally gave a positive response. A 17-member expert team had been urgently formed. They would watch and review the live broadcast of the public lecture in one of the conference rooms at the headquarters in Manhattan, New York. If they passed today's preliminary examination, they would be able to enter the voting phase of the global referendum. In addition, the UNESCO office in Los Angeles would also send a commissioner to attend Qin Guang's public lecture. Of course, these things were easy to say, but they cost money like running water. Qin Guang waved his hand. This was nothing. Chapter 1123. It was different from doing similar things in China. For example, if one wanted to get permission from the SARFT, the fee would be low on the surface, but behind the scenes, the cost would be at least hundreds of thousands of yuan, or even tens of millions of yuan. Because of this, many people criticized the corruption in China, saying that foreigners had a brighter moon. Qin Guang used his own experience to prove that this was all bullshit. They might not have done anything behind the scenes, but they had clearly marked the price. Just like the UNESCO certification review meeting, the 17 experts took an Uber from their homes to the conference room at the headquarters to sit down and talk. They reported a budget on the spot. They did not hide it at all. The total funding for the project and organization activities was $1.7 million. Do you have to be so king honest? Are you afraid that I don't know that you all get a share? If I were a poorer person, this thing would have definitely fallen through. Fortunately, Qin Guang was rich and overbearing. As long as it was something that could be settled with money, it wouldn't be a problem. Anyway, there was still money left. Qin Guang immediately asked Fang Tianyu, who was in Princeton, to transfer the money. After that, he cleaned up and put 2 books under his armpit. He went downstairs and went straight to the headquarters of the American Film Association. For Qin Guang, this place was not special or sacred. However, for the entire North American region and even the world's new filmmakers, this place was full of mystery. Many people even regarded this place as a holy land in their hearts. This was not surprising. Many people who were dedicated to the performing arts were not qualified to set foot on the marble stairs in front of this Baroque building. Almost everyone who appeared here was a famous person in the film industry. Almost every major decision that was closely related to the development of the global film industry came from the conference room in this building. Apart from that, Every filmmaker regarded it as a lifelong honor to be able to hold a lecture here. So far, even many Oscar winners have not received such an honor. However, today when Qin Guang stepped out of the car, the dense crowd standing on the stairs burst into applause. Fred, the current president, old James, the former president, and even the white-haired former president, the former president, who had been renowned since the 1960s, were among the people waiting outside the door. Fred was the current president, the former president, who had difficulty standing, and was an old man who had been renowned in the world since the 1960s. He was now nearly 100 years old, but he also came after watching World School Performing Arts. Qin Guang did not expect the American Film Association to give him such a grand welcome ceremony. Although he did not know most of the people here, he saw that Fred and old James could not stand in the middle of the crowd. He knew that the status of the people here was not small. Not far away, flashes rang out. There was no need for the Motion Picture Association to send invitations to the media, and they would naturally flock over. Not to mention that the most important guest today was the Chinese, Qin Guang, who had been a hot topic recently. Media people from all over the world had to eat, both in China and abroad. There was even a rumor in the media circle that whoever could take a picture of Qin Guang in the bathroom would become a millionaire. Whoever could take a picture of Qin Guang helping the poor would become a millionaire. Whoever could take a picture of Qin Guang masturbating would become a millionaire. Qin Guang waved enthusiastically at the people and walked straight to President Fred and the others. Everyone chatted for a while and then quickly got to the point. The conference hall was already full of people. Qin Guang, President Fred, and old James were having a simple conversation backstage. Fred pointed to a person in the crowd outside and asked, "Mr. Qin, the person sitting in the second row is a staff member of UNESCO. Do you want to greet him first?" Qin Guang thought about it and shook his head. "No need. By the way, President Fred, will my public lecture be broadcasted live in the United States today?" Fred nodded. "Yes, it will. This is both an award ceremony for the World Film Hall of Fame and your public lecture. Over there is a live broadcast staff from ABC, over there is NBC, and on the other side is Fox. Oh, by the way, UBC, which has been working well with you. We've given them the best live broadcast seats." "Thank you very much." In fact, he could have collected a lot of copyright fees today, but Qin Guang was eager to spread his influence and did not care about the money. On the other side, old James was a little uneasy. "Mr. Qin, where are your lesson plans?" Old James had been carefully looking at the two books under Qin Guang's armpit. He looked left and right and saw that they were the hardcover edition of World Faction, which was publicly available on the market. Qin Guang smiled and pointed to his head. "Here." "Huh." Fred and old James were a little confused for a moment. They wondered if Qin Guang was being too casual. With a smile, Qin Guang continued, "Let me tell the two of you something. I didn't take more than 5 days to finish writing these two books." "What?" Fred and old James exclaimed in unison. "Impossible." The two of them added. Qin Guang only smiled mysteriously. "When you reach my level, you will understand what it means to have everything at your fingertips. My understanding of acting, in fact, these two books only scratched the surface." As Qin Guang spoke, he patted the two books in his hands and stuffed them into old James's hands. "Mr. Watson, since many people haven't bought them yet, why don't you give these two books away? So, shall we start now?" Although Fred was still in shock, he subconsciously felt that Qin Guang would not brag about this. There was no need for that. "Okay, Mr. Qin, let's go." The two walked out side by side. After a few steps, President Fred said, "Mr. Qin, there are actually 2 standards for the World Film Hall of Fame." Qin Guang was stunned. 2 standards? Fred nodded. "Yes, one of them is to hang a portrait over there and leave a name and a brief introduction below." Fred pointed to the wall of the large conference room. Qin Guang glanced over and saw nearly 100 oil paintings hanging on both sides. They looked very much like Newton in his physics textbook when he was in middle school. Qin Guang felt that he's still alive and he's still so young. Yet, his portrait was placed here for others to reminisce about, and it's rather disgusting. What about the other one? He felt that it was better to change his way of thinking. Fred said, "I don't know if Mr. Qin noticed when you got out of the car just now, but there are a total of 9 bronze statues outside our headquarters." Qin Guang nodded. "I noticed. These 9 statues are actually recognized by filmmakers all over the world. They are the 9 predecessors who made the greatest contributions to the art of film since its birth, including Stanislavski, who single-handedly created the C family performance system. We believe that your cosmopolitan performance art is indeed superior to the current expressionist, methodological and experiential styles." Your personal achievements are comparable to Stanislavski's, so of course you are also qualified to have a statue. Qin Guang almost fell to the ground. Damn, after thinking about it, he felt that it would be better to hang a portrait on the wall. That's a bit. I'm still alive, Qin Guang said. Fred chuckled. Mr. Qin, maybe this is what you Chinese are particular about. But in America and Los Angeles, it's normal for a city hero who is supported by the whole city to have his own statue. You can go outside the Staples Center and take a look. Shaquille O'Neal's statue has just been completed, and Kobe Bryant's statue will be completed soon. Before that, there were statues of West, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Johnson, and Hearn. Only then did Qin Guang feel relieved. Is that so? But considering your age and the wide range of hobbies you have shown in the past, everyone felt that it was likely that you would lose interest in movies after you won an Oscar. So, when Damon proposed to erect a statue for you, there were still some objections within our association. After all, the Lakers are just the Lakers of Los Angeles, and the American Film Association is the temple of the entire world of movies. Qin Guang was speechless at President Fred's keen eyes. They were right. After getting the statue of the god of acting, he would only make movies if he was bored out of his mind. So be it. It doesn't matter. So, just this morning we came to an agreement. Please go ahead. Mr. Qin, if your public lecture today can be further improved on the basis of these two books, and your cosmopolitan performance art can become a world intangible cultural heritage, then of course it will have been recognized by the world. Then of course we should erect a statue for you. Is that so? Okay then. In fact, Qin Guang didn't care much about the statue. This wasn't the statue in his own world in a cup. It was nothing more than a symbol. This even reminded him of the statue of the Lord of the Earth that was still standing in the Tangshan industrial factory. It had the same effect and it was very disgusting. At 10 o'clock in the morning, this might be called the most important lesson in the history of the performing arts finally began. More than 2,000 filmmakers from all over the world sat in the conference hall. They had a variety of skin colors and ages. Before this, each of them might have had their own different understanding of movies. For example, Big Beard Deng and Shi Changhe, who were too embarrassed to tell Qin Guang that they had quietly hidden in the crowd. However, after today, perhaps not everyone would become a complete cosmopolitan. They would still have their own styles. But on top of their original style, it was inevitable that they would be covered with a layer of characteristics that only belonged to the world faction. From now on, the world's three major performing arts systems would be merged into one, leaving only the cosmopolitan. But the cosmopolitan would inevitably be divided into several parts. For example, when it came to actors, there would be the expressive cosmopolitan, the methodological cosmopolitan, and the experiential cosmopolitan. When it came to directors, there would be different ideas. Qin Guang summarized the knowledge he had learned from the world in a cup without reservation through this public class. The knowledge he showed was broad and profound, all-encompassing, but rigorous and reasonable. Finally, in the evening, the huge conference hall was filled with thunderous applause. Qin Guang's 8-hour cosmopolitan public class officially ended. Qin Guang opened his arms and enjoyed the countless admiring eyes from below the stage. He seemed to be able to smell the statue in his nose. Soon, it was really soon. That night, on the homepage of the official website of UNESCO, a huge headline appeared. A global referendum on the application of the cosmopolitan intangible cultural heritage was officially held. 7 days later, at noon, the global referendum came to an end with a total of 136,847,217 votes, with 99% of the votes in favor. UNESCO announced the referendum on the spot. 2 hours later, it was officially announced that the cosmopolitan performing arts had become the world's intangible cultural heritage. Qin Guang was still alive, but he already had the heritage. Chapter 11:24. There was no point in staying in Los Angeles anymore. Qin Guang flew to Princeton again, mainly to help Zhuo Jingxi solve some problems with photocatalysis. Although teacher Zhuo had a deep understanding of the 5 God-level formulas after enjoying the double PY transaction, she was still a bit of a cramming method of teaching. Although she had some details in her mind, she still needed some time to summarize them as a whole. By making this trip, Qin Guang could more or less save some time. Unfortunately, he didn't get what he wanted in a certain aspect. He didn't know if Zhuo Jingxi was doing it on purpose or if she was really addicted to it. While Qin Guang was in Princeton, she simply lived in the laboratory and didn't go out at all. A fly couldn't bite a seamless egg. The night before the World Pie Cruise arrived in Los Angeles, Qin Guang returned to Los Angeles. Time passed bit by bit. After all, he cared more about the acting god statue. Another 4 days passed. During this period, with Los Angeles as the starting point, tens of millions of copies of World School Performing Arts spread across the United States like a wave. The publishers who tried to take advantage of Chen Guang finally realized that the situation was not good. They were furious and filed a lawsuit against Chen Guang. Unfortunately, it was of no use. Commissioner Brown took out a list of documents and laid them on the table. No one dared to say anything against it. Then the United Publishing Union went to the Ministry of Commerce, trying to get the Ministry of Commerce to take the lead in filing a lawsuit against Chen Guang, accusing him of smuggling, dumping, and other crimes. However, the Ministry of Commerce reacted very quickly. Even halfway through the cruise, 2 of the pro-China officials in the Ministry of Commerce had already contacted the Baker law firm with Tang Xiaokai's help, and they had made preparations in advance for the upcoming war. The documents from the Publishing Union arrived at the Ministry of Commerce that day. The next morning, the Ministry of Commerce's public reply was sent out like lightning. The Ministry of Commerce's response was the same as the General Administration of Publishing, responding to the Publishing Union's questions one by one. In the end, the attitude of the Ministry of Commerce was clear and its position was clear. Chen Guang had personally shipped the World School Performing Arts monograph from Wuxia. Not only did it not violate the relevant laws, but it was also a generous act committed to spreading the intangible cultural heritage. Moreover, as an academic monograph, Chen Guang's price was relatively low, which was completely different from smuggling, which was a huge profit. It was full of internationalism, and there was no reason to criticize him in terms of legal principles and reason. Although the Ministry of Commerce was not necessarily a monolithic organization, and the main ideology was still anti-Chinese, the pro-Chinese faction moved too quickly, not even giving the others time to react. Furthermore, although the entire operation process happened very quickly and abruptly, it was completely tenable. Unless the current Special Passage Treaty on the world's intangible cultural heritage was amended, there was no other way. No one could stop the 10 million sets of World School Performing Arts from spreading like a virus across the United States. The members of the Publishing Union had no other choice but to bite the bullet. In the end, they had no choice but to reluctantly accept this cruel reality. Fortunately, the high taxes paid by Chen Guang soothed their hurt feelings. If it was in the past, asking Chen Guang to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes was equivalent to asking for his life. But now, Chen Guang Group can make a net profit of nearly $700 million from the global box office. Even if Jin Shiyue and Jiang Ye's companies are excluded, Chen Guang's personal income is as high as $600 million. Chen Guang Media should share the income, and Chen Guang's personal income is as high as $600 million. This was no pressure at all. Now that the box office share had been gradually returned to the account, it was currently in the distribution company opened by Tang Xiao. Chen Guang asked someone to transfer it out and directly paid the bill. In addition, Chen Guang did not completely fall out with the National Publishing Union after all. In the past, Demi often used to give others some benefits. Now Chen Guang was giving them a taste of their own medicine. The order for 1 million sets of deluxe editions was still given to them, but of course the price was not as crazy as before. They even got a discount of 10% more than usual. The reason was very simple. To make a statue of God, what they really needed was a large number of ordinary editions. The deluxe edition was purely for profit. Others cared about it, but to Chen Guang it was dispensable. If you still don't behave, then I won't do it anymore. What can you do to me? As for China, the Chinese version of World School that Chen Guang had personally translated was finally printed and resold to the whole country. As a Chinese with a proper background, his book was first published in English before being translated into Chinese. Chen Guang had no choice but to admit that he had made a huge blunder and attracted quite a bit of criticism from Pinky. However, he was too lazy to explain to others. From the beginning, his target was the Oscars. Of course, it was the fastest way to get it abroad. Those who wanted to criticize him could find it. Even if he explained it to them, they would selectively ignore it. Those who didn't want to criticize him would understand without any explanation. Chen Guang just thought it was ridiculous. The Chinese version was only 10 days late. Did they have to go online and say that he had forgotten his roots? There were even such rumors on the internet, saying that he had even changed his nationality and became a foreigner. Chen Guang did not even want to listen to them. Are you stupid? The former director of the General Administration of Guangdong, the head of a violent organization, and a legitimate deputy minister. Even if I am willing to change my nationality, they should dare to accept it, right? It would be strange if the old men did not fight with me. In the next few days, Qin Guang ran around the United States to watch a few WWE and UFC matches and met those fighting stars who supported him. On the surface, it seemed that he was just returning the favor and going to support them personally. In fact, not many people knew that he had been thinking about what he should do to complete the feat of a physical statue of God. Participating in this kind of competition was mostly meaningless. It was useless even if he was invincible in the world. With his current ability, there was no one in this world who could make him go all out. Others would fall with just a finger. It was not difficult to be the best in the world, but it was difficult to be unprecedented. Let's not talk about foreign countries. Just in China, Qin Guang said that he was the first in history. If others said that he was capable, why don't you compete with Li Yuanba? You have great strength? The flowery monk Lu Zhishan uprooted willows. His strength was no less than yours, right? A certain general held an iron spear that weighed hundreds of kilograms and danced it like a wheel of wind and fire. If you are so capable, go and fight with others. Also, can you defeat Qiyu, the god of war, Xing Tian, the ancient god of war? What? You said that they were mythical figures and did not exist? Yes, we did not have clear evidence to prove their existence or whether they were as strong as the legend said. But you also could not find evidence to prove that they were fake. This was a paradox that made people feel hopeless. Qin Guang could only say, "How can I compare my head to the ancient people who have turned to ashes in the half-life of the elements?" At least he could find a lot of reference materials for acting, and there were authoritative works that could make a clear comparison. But when it came to fighting, there was really no way. The living could never defeat the dead. 3 days later, as more and more people successfully bought World's Pie, more and more people went into the cinema to watch Women, together with the monograph. At the same time, more people downloaded the videos of Luo and Zhu, Thunderstorm, and his public lecture at the International Film Hall of Fame and watched them continuously. Those who acted in movies and made movies learned from him, and those who only liked to watch movies and comment on movies only watched superficially. Those who didn't understand anything could at least find the real reason why Women, which was played in 2D, could bring them a completely different experience. Ordinary movies pursued a comprehensive visual and auditory experience, but Women was different. World's Pie was different. They were both performing arts. Others acted in a play, and the audience also watched a play. But for Qin Guang, they watched life. As more and more people surrendered to him, Qin Guang almost set off the strongest water storm in history. The water storm, which was spread by word of mouth, was like the sea level rise caused by the melting of the Antarctic glaciers during global warming. Within 3 days, it completely swept the world. At the same time, after the audience all over the world had been waiting for more than half a month, the long-awaited global release in other continents finally came. This time, the English version and the original Chinese version, which were dubbed by Qin Guang, were released at the same time. What was an explosion of dried bamboo shoots? This was an explosion of dried bamboo shoots. How grand was it to break the first-day box office records on all continents at the same time? Ordinary words were not enough to describe the brilliance of this era. Previously, although everyone had recognized the artistic achievements of Women, they still had reservations about the box office. Artistic achievements and box office performance were never directly proportional. Before this, not many people thought that Women had any possibility of making history. The most optimistic estimate was that it would just break 2 billion. This was already the third highest box office in history, only behind Avatar and Titanic, and even slightly higher than Star Wars 7, The Force Awakens. But now that the movie was really released worldwide, it was unknown whether it was because of the sudden release of the impact of the accumulated box office in all continents, or because the movie was originally so suitable for all ages. In short, it was a complete explosion. It was even fiercer than the impact of Avatar. But Qin Guang didn't care about this at all. At this time, he was sitting cross-legged on the roof of the Flemington Hotel. Obviously, an unprecedented strong sense of worship was coming from all over the world, as if it had materialized. Qin Guang could even see the faces of people like Emma Watson and William Jones from these thoughts. He had already vaguely felt that the power of the Holy Grail that filled every corner of the earth was becoming more and more active. Even the white threads of the power of faith that had gradually sunk into the ground of Cloud City and his world in the cup were floating up again. In addition, all the 9 great statues that he had obtained so far were faintly trembling. The frequency of the trembling seemed to be completely in sync with his heartbeat. Even if the 9 great statues were in the world in the cup, the trembling seemed to be able to pass through the barrier of time and space, resonating with his physical body in the outside world. This caused his heartbeat to become stronger and stronger, and even his blood was gradually heating up. Without a doubt, all these strange phenomena meant that his acting statue of a god was about to appear. But he was also inexplicably surprised. He had obtained 9 statues before this, but none of them had caused such a huge commotion like today. He had been the owner of the heavenly Holy Grail for more than half a year, and his understanding of this Grail had deepened day by day. Until now, he thought that he already understood the heavenly Holy Grail very well. But now, a situation that was completely out of his expectations had suddenly appeared, causing him to wake up in an instant. After all this time, he still knew almost nothing about this broken Grail. The leaked power of the Holy Grail. What Lioli said was that because of his continuous triggering of the world of punishment, the real world and the real world were getting closer and closer, and even starting to slowly merge. The almost imperceptible but irresistible power of the Holy Grail and the elemental power between heaven and earth was becoming more and more intense. There was also the mutated wolf pack that he had previously encountered in Whitewater River County, or the phone thief who had suddenly died after being arrested by Wu Tong, or the special world in the cup in the laboratory used to study photocatalysis that was inexplicably triggered, and the birth of the new statue that had caused the power of the Holy Grail and the elemental power in the outside world to go berserk at the same time. Then there was the strange phenomenon of his heartbeat resonating with the statue. All of this seemed completely out of the ordinary. Regarding this, Qin Guang only wanted to say 5 words. Absolute dumbfounded. He could only ask Lioli. Lady Lioli, what the hell is this? Causing trouble. The long-lost voice of Lioli sounded in his mind. Don't panic. I'm relieved that you said so. Please show me the way, Lady Lioli. Lioli coughed lightly. There is a very popular saying on the internet. Please say it. Lioli said darkly, life is like being raped. Since you can't resist, then close your eyes and enjoy it. Qin Guang, who was sitting cross-legged, looked solemn, but his heart was like a shrew cursing in the street. Damn it, Lioli's rape theory was the same as the original, pray for your own good, and there is always a way out. To put it bluntly, it was irresponsible. She dragged him, the pitiful savior, into the water, and then she shirked her responsibilities at all kinds of critical moments. She knew how to pretend not to know and deliberately messed with him. Well, if she really didn't know, it seemed to be even worse. We can't do this, right? Let's not talk about my life and death. Just look at the mutated giant wolves in Whitewater River County last time. If they hit the ordinary people, how much damage would they cause? According to the current trend, God knows when they will appear again. You should be a little more responsible. Lioli sneered, that's strange. Isn't this all caused by you? Isn't it you who triggered the world of punishment? Isn't it you who made the real world and your real world get closer and closer? Qin Guang was not convinced. Bah. I didn't know it would be like this before. Lioli used her usual sharp tongue. Why? If you knew it back then, would you have chosen not to use the world of fate and not to save your mother's life? Or would you have obediently let the extremists control your plane and let you and your friends die in the sky? Are you so great? Qin Guang, if I knew it back then, I would really. Qin Guang was speechless. Chapter 11:25. He found that not only was he no match for Lioli, but he was also no match for her in words. Even though he had mastered 4,987 languages and was proficient in millions of vulgarities in various languages that could make people doubt their lives, he was still no match for Lioli when it came to reasoning. Lioli gave him an extremely difficult choice. Was he going to sacrifice his mother or drag the whole world down with him? Was he going to sacrifice himself and his woman, or drag the whole world down with him? Even if he had known the result and was given 10,000 chances to choose again, it seemed impossible for him to make such a heroic declaration. Especially the first time, if the choice was a life for a life, Qin Guang felt that he might really be willing to exchange his life for his mother's survival. Qin Guang argued feebly, but I didn't know anything after all. You could have told me earlier. Lioli sneered, but now you already know, and you once again crazily pursue the 10th statue for your own survival. You have accelerated the speed of the integration of the real world and your real world. I didn't know that either. All I could think about was the problem of the statue. All I could think about was the debt of 1.46 billion faith points that I had to bear. I never thought that the moment I got the statue, I would accelerate the integration of the two worlds. And it was because you didn't remind me. I remembered an old saying from your hometown again. I didn't kill the people, but the people died because of me. Qin Guang was infuriated by Lioli's words, but his imagination ran wild. You are a sinister villain. Now I suspect that you are not a god emperor at all. You are an invader from a certain plane, right? You are just using me. You keep tempting me. You asked me to open the barrier between the two worlds with my own hands so that the army of billions of gods and devils behind you could enter our universe and invade our plane. He almost convinced himself. Perhaps he had been dealing with too many movies recently, and he had seen a lot of movies, so there were many similar themes in the history of movies. The more Qin Guang thought about it, the more he felt that his seemingly absurd idea was quite possible. The two so-called gods, Liu Li and Lu Ming, never had the slightest majesty and solemnity that belonged to a real god. Their behavior all along was clearly that of the unruly, willful, sinister and cunning demon princesses that were often written in fantasy novels. Qin Guang's memories of Lu Li and Lu Ming flashed across his mind. Except for a few times when Lu Li revealed the so-called true body of the Xinhuang, she was really like that most of the time. Unexpectedly, Lu Li and Lu Ming burst out laughing in the cup world. Lu Ming, fool. Liu Li said, I really think that you should go to the mental world next time and become the most mentally retarded person in the human world. The two deity emperors laughed mercilessly at Qin Guang. However, Qin Guang remained unmoved. He glared angrily and kept a straight face. Tell me, is this real or not? He roared in his heart. Liu Li did not say anything. Lu Ming scoffed but changed the topic. All right, now that things have come to this, Sister Lu Li is still soft-hearted. I'll admit it to you. Not bad. It's true. But we are not some ridiculous demon race. We are indeed the god race and also the real gods. Our purpose is to devour the core of your extremely complete universe. Your universe is very special and delicious. At that time, your universe will return to before the Big Bang and become the most delicious singularity that will be slowly eaten by us. Qin Guang fell silent again, and an unprecedented firm belief rose in his heart. If his guess just now was true, then he, the so-called savior, had always been like the puppet army, the guide party, and the traitor during the War of Resistance. No, if I really attracted the gods and demons, then their real purpose must be the entire universe. Am I a traitor? Qin Guang raised his head blankly and looked at the starry sky in the sky. He couldn't help but think of Wuxia tens of thousands of kilometers away. The sky there should be clear. His parents were probably bragging to others that their son was about to become the first Wuxia Oscar winner in history, and his grandchildren in the dormitory should be forging his autographed photos. There were also Wenwen, Jin Shiriyue, Jiang Yage, Sun Xiaoxuan, Wu Tong, Lu Fei, Xan Qin, Wu Miaowan, Teacher Zhua, who was in Princeton, and Tang Ying, who would arrive in Los Angeles in 2 days. Many names and faces, from family to friends, from relatives to women, many people that he had interacted with in one way or another in his life, or had heard of and admired countless people. A crazy idea suddenly surged in his heart. This idea came extremely abruptly and without warning, but it was exceptionally fierce. This idea occupied his entire mind in an instant and became extremely firm. For family, friends, for Earth, for all of humanity, for the solar system, for the entire universe. I'll jump. All of this took a long time to describe, but from the time he started thinking about it to the time he took action, perhaps only 0.1 seconds had passed. It was even too late for Liu Li to control his body. With a loud bang, spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the incomparably sturdy ceiling of the Flemington Hotel under his feet. Holding the cup in his hand, Qin Guang's entire body violently flew over the edge of the rooftop of the Flemington Hotel. That's right, he planned to commit suicide. He believed that in this situation, there was only one way to stop all of this, and that was to kill himself. Flying over the rooftop of the 19th floor of the Flemington Hotel, floating in the air, Qin Guang silently thought, really, I never dreamed that I could actually be so great. Forget it, it's better for me to die than for everyone else to die. I'm going to die sooner or later anyway. Rather than dragging the entire world to hell with me, I might as well go one step ahead. If everything that happened to me could be recorded in a book, I wonder if the future generations of humanity would laugh at my ignorance and ridiculousness, or praise my greatness and bravery. Death can be lighter than a goose feather or heavier than Mount Tai, but for me, my death is the weight of the entire universe. I can't even describe how great I am. This simple leap of faith of mine, what kind of majestic spirit does it carry? Just as Qin Guang was constantly hypnotizing and numbing himself in his heart, constantly finding millions and millions of sufficient reasons for this seemingly rash and impulsive leap of faith, this conversation appeared in his mind again. Dear Cry, you idiot. This fool really believed it. You don't even know the situation when you're joking. This was Liu Li's hysterical roar. Qin Guang thought to himself, what's going on? Then his eyes widened. What? Dear Cry also panicked. This emperor is F***king convinced by you. You're really jumping off the building. Crazy. Completely crazy. Still floating in the air with the cold wind blowing, Qin Guang became more and more dumbfounded. Big. F***ck. Does this mean that Dear Cry is joking? Impossible. I don't believe it. Feeling the strong wind blowing against his face was almost deformed. He shouted like this, but not a single sound came out. Lioli quickly explained, "Do you think this is possible? If it's really like this, why did we go through so much trouble to help you? Also, don't you feel that it's strange at all? Sometimes your control over the heavenly Holy Grail far surpasses this emperor. You don't feel it at all? Just like when you wanted to get customized training, when you used the Heaven's Line Grail in batches to improve yourself, your sovereignty over the heavenly Holy Grail far surpasses mine and Dear Cry's by countless times." Dear Cry also explained at the side, "That's right, my body, Sister Lioli's divine soul and the heavenly Holy Grail are all partially fused, but my control over this lousy heavenly Holy Grail is still surpassed by you, because the heavenly Holy Grail is you." "Enough. Dear Cry, don't say any more." Lioli suddenly interrupted Dear Cry and said, "In short, Qin Guang, you have to believe me, I swear on my godhood, we are definitely not those strange things that you think. Also, the reason why it became like this is indeed not the fault of this emperor and Dear Cry. You are indeed the most fundamental reason and even the only reason. The inside story is extremely deep with your current realm, even if I tell you clearly you won't understand." Qin Guang was about a few meters away from the floor. He didn't have the time to carefully consider Lioli's words, nor did he have the time to think about whether he regretted it or not. He decisively landed on his face. Chapter 11:26. Before completely losing consciousness, the pitiful Lord Guang could only express that he regretted it a little. "But it's no use, I've already sacrificed my life with the greatest courage in the universe." "Wait, seems like I can't die? I fell for nothing. Pia. Screech." With this sound, Qin Guang landed on the cement wall in the backyard of the Flemington Hotel. The scene was tragic, enough to scare a 7-foot-tall man to the point of urinating on the spot. To sum it up, it was an eyesore. Under the joint efforts of Lioli and Dear Cry, the Chen-type meat paste was moved to the back of the bushes before anyone discovered it, conveniently concealing the smell. Fortunately, the hotel's watchdog was a dumb husky. The security guards brought the seemingly fierce but actually adorably dumb husky over for a stroll, but they found nothing. They only found a big pit on the ground, and then they turned around and left with a belly full of doubts. After a full 2 hours, under the frenzied infusion of divine power by the two god emperors, Qin Guang, who had the regenerative ability of the earth paste exploder, came back to life. That's right, of course he wouldn't die. Actually, without Lioli and Dear Cry's help, he wouldn't die either, just that the recovery time would be much longer. After all, he was the highest level elemental creature, the earth paste exploder. Saying that he had an immortal body was an understatement. The naked Qin Guang sat silently in the bushes, once again looking up at the moon in the sky. After thinking about it, there was only one word in his mind: what a scam. The scene changed and he entered the world in the cup, then sat cross-legged on the floor of Cloud City, staring fiercely at Lioli and Dear Cry with a pair of dead fish eyes. "You guys, that's enough." Lioli and Dear Cry smiled apologetically. "Haha, I was just making a harmless joke, I didn't expect your reaction to be so intense." Qin Guang roared, "Nonsense. How can it not be intense? King believed it. I thought I was going to be a traitor. Do you think I had much time to think? Lioli can see through my heart. King really wanted to stop you guys. Do you know how much determination I've put into this? Do you know how much pain I was in just now? I'm not joking with you. If that's the case, I can jump into the atomic furnace. I mean it." Qin Guang was still a little angry. Whether he was a villain or a great person, everyone had their own bottom line. If the world had to be destroyed because of him, if his death could save the whole world, Qin Guang felt that the reason he chose to sacrifice himself was 100 times better than those martyrs who would rather die than surrender and die for the revolutionary cause during the war. They died for the ideals of communism, but no matter what, they only represented a part of the people, and they could not even break through the scope of the earth. "And I, Qin Guang, am doing this for all of humanity, for the entire universe, and of course for the other life forms that may or may not exist in the billions and billions of universes." If he had more time to think, of course, he wouldn't have made such a crazy decision in a hurry. However, he knew that Lioli knew what he was thinking. It was a bit of a mouthful, but that was the truth. Therefore, as long as it involved the heavenly Holy Grail and himself and Liuli, he had to be so resolute. I know, but I really didn't mean it. Sorry, very sorry. Seeing that Qin Guang was still brooding over it, Lu Ming apologized in a slightly tired voice. Liuli also tried hard to stay awake. She couldn't even lift her eyelids. The lustrous feather dress that had just recovered with great difficulty seemed to be on the verge of breaking apart again. Sigh, I've really been fooled by you two living treasures. An idiot made a joke regardless of the occasion, and the other fool actually suspected that I was plotting something. I'm really suffering as a deity emperor. Besides, Qin Guang, save it. Even if Lu Ming and I really want to invade your universe, you can't stop us. Well, now you see you can't die. You can jump into an atomic furnace and you can't die even if you fly into outer space. You can't die even if I put you into the center of the sun. You now look like a living physical creature, but in fact, your body and divine soul have become an incredible existence between materialization and energy, comparable to a deity emperor. If your body is really completely destroyed, you will at most become an immortal elemental creature ancestor. Besides, you really can't blame me for not telling you in advance that things will become like this. I have told you countless times that this is the first time the heavenly Holy Grail has been activated, and no one knows what will happen. Let alone me, even my father, the master god of chaos, doesn't know why this situation has happened. What I can do is to help you analyze what kind of situation this is after it has happened. As for what will happen next, I can't predict it either. Just as I have always said to you, when the boat comes to the bridgehead, there will be a way. Whether it is you, me or Lu Ming, we can only take one step at a time, counter every move, counter every move, counter every soldier with a general, water with an earthweir. Qin Guang, admit it, the vernacular telepathy combination that shone brilliantly in the Chinese idiom conference some time ago, was it you and Lu Ming? Your idiom conference can't stop. Lu Ming, Liuli. About 10 minutes later, everyone finally calmed down completely, and the three restored the mutual trust relationship in the past. Then they began to talk about business. Liuli, today's situation is probably because the total number of your statues has finally reached 10. It could also be because the statue you have successfully cast this time is too perfect, or it could be because the integration of the real world and your real world has finally exceeded a certain limit. That's why it's like this. That's not right? Aren't my 7 idols gone? But you can still get faith value, can't you? And it only looks like it's gone on the surface, but you can still feel their vibration just now, can't you? Qin Guang asked. Well, it's like this. So in order to chase after the statue, I have inevitably further accelerated the integration of the real world and the real world? Liuli nodded first, then shook her head. That's not necessarily true. Maybe it will happen even if you don't do anything. It may also be that the two situations are coincidentally put together. You're not afraid that I will give up the next statue and take the initiative to die, so you're deliberately tricking me? As the saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. Qin Guang subconsciously began to doubt Liuli's motives again. Lu Ming, who was next to him, said helplessly, Okay, I really give up. Sister Liuli has already sworn with her divinity, do you still not believe her? If it wasn't for Sister Liuli not letting me say it, I really want to tell you something. Even if something really happens to your broken cup, you can never blame it on me and Sister Liuli. Hearing this, Qin Guang examined Liuli, trying to use his own eyes to see through Liuli's heart. He knew that these two gods had been hiding something from him. Moreover, they didn't even try to hide it. They just showed it directly. I won't tell you, what are you going to do? Hit us? Forget it. All in all, I understand what you're trying to say. Whatever I do or don't do, I can't change the reality that the two worlds are gradually merging and the real world will be changed, right? Liuli nodded. Exactly. Also, there's no telling when it will happen. Maybe it will take a long time, or maybe it will happen in the next second. The seemingly subtle changes will reach a certain limit instantly. By then, Qin Guang interrupted Liuli. By then, existences like the mutated wolves that I encountered last time will appear everywhere in the world? Liuli shook her head. Not exactly. Qin Guang immediately took a long breath in relief. That's good. I was really worried about that. Liuli, no, it's much more serious than that. Qin Guang almost jumped to his feet. Why don't you make it clear? What do you mean by much more serious? I don't know, but I'm certain that the changes caused by the integration and overlap of two dimensions can't just be superficial. In your universe, it's still uncertain for other planets, but on Earth the changes will certainly shake the foundation. What foundation? Everything. Everything? That's right. Everything that you see, hear, know, and even everything that you don't know. Everything that you can imagine, everything that you can't imagine. Including all aspects of time and space, big and small. Even a speck of dust that has been floating in the air since the Jurassic period will be affected. Qin Guang gasped. In other words, from our past to our present to our future, everything will be completely changed? Liu Li grunted. We can't rule out this possibility, but there's one thing that won't change. What? Because you're the master of the Holy Grail. For you, no matter what kind of integration happens, no matter where you're born, even if the real world and your reality are completely integrated, there won't be any changes to you. Because you can travel between every world in the cup. Qin Guang didn't think this was good news. He had a vague feeling. The greatest pain in the world was standing in front of the person you once loved the most, but she didn't recognize you. In other words, it's possible that my family is no longer my family, or that they don't exist at all. After the world is changed, my ethical family, my parents, may become people that I don't know at all? But in their hearts, in their memories, I'm still their son? But I don't know them at all? Lu Mingguo's voice came from afar. Although I don't want to tell you this may happen, but it may not necessarily happen. Qin Guang asked again, also, everyone that I used to know, may become strangers to me. Liu Li nodded again, but she thought for a moment and said, just as I said before, if the real world and your reality merge and completely change your time and space, you must be the most stable point among all the planes. Then, just like how every pair of people in the world who know each other will have some kind of connection, let's call it fate. The threads of fate form a big net, binding everyone in the world to this net, or in other words, binding every planet in the universe to this net. The fate of countless tiny existences combine together to become the fate of a basic ion. Countless basic ions combine together. Letting out two coughs, Qin Guang replied, you don't have to explain too much. What I understand is that everything in the world is connected, and every existence is an individual. But at the same time, they're also a part of the whole. Yes, that's right. Then, when the vibration of subversion comes and is about to overturn the entire plane, you, as the only stable point, the things that are personally related to you or people, are likely to get some stable characteristics because of the connection with your fate. The closer their relationship with you is, the more stable they will be. Qin Guang suddenly understood. I understand what you mean. I'm equivalent to Noah's Ark in the Bible story when the world is coming to an end, right? The closer you are to me, the harder it is to be changed, right? You can understand it this way. With this, his heart felt at ease. Previously, he was most worried about his parents, relatives, and friends, as well as those female confidants that he couldn't let go of. This was equivalent to taking a tranquilizer. Also, this change may not be completed in an instant, it may be carried out unknowingly and subtly. Also, even if someone has a close relationship with you, it is normal to have some slight changes. For example, that female Dr. Tang Ying, she is very close to you, right? But maybe one day it will be normal for her cup size to increase or decrease by one size. Qin Guang nodded helplessly. I understand. The most helpless thing in the world is knowing what will happen but being unable to stop it. Chapter 11:27. Finally, the power of the Holy Grail outside became more and more violent. The god of acting was stirring as if it would appear in the next moment, but it never happened. Qin Guang did not know that at this time, a piece of news that completely blew up the world suddenly appeared on the internet. The Oscar committee finally became manly and made a shocking decision. President of the American Film Association, chairman of the Oscar committee, Fred officially announces big news. For the first time in history, the Oscars will be awarded in advance. The founder of the world's performing arts, Qin Guang, wins 3 awards alone. The storm of public opinion for Qin Guang to be awarded the Oscar in advance became more and more intense, especially after the tens of millions of copies of World's Faction were fully released in North America. The box office of Women in the other 6 continents, excluding Antarctica, became even more intense, which in turn put a lot of pressure on President Fred. It was even to the extent that awarding the Oscar to Qin Guang in advance was truly a global political correctness. After an incomparably painful struggle and hesitation, President Fred and the others finally made a brave decision that night. This year's Academy Award for Best Actor, which meant that Qin Guang was fully deserving of it. But this was not the end. Women also won the Best Film of the Year in one fell swoop. Of course, it was also an early award, and the reason for awarding the award was extremely sufficient. Although the film was not perfect and had many flaws, as long as it was the first time that the world's performing arts had appeared on the big screen, it would be enough to make the film go down in history. Logically speaking, the Best Film Award was more of an honor for the film's director, but when it came to women, no one would think so. Even Big Beard Deng himself would not have such extravagant hopes. Everyone knew that this was for Qin Guang. But this was not the end. There was another award. As everyone knew, the Lifetime Achievement Award was not given every year. Only when a person who made a huge contribution to the film industry reached a special level and was recognized by everyone, would this award be added in a certain year. In recent years, due to various reasons such as the market environment, the Lifetime Achievement Award was given almost every year, and its value had greatly decreased. However, Qin Guang had broken an incredible record. He was the youngest person to win the Oscar Lifetime Achievement Award in the shortest time since he entered the industry. He was also the only person to win the Lifetime Achievement Award after only acting in one movie. If the value of the Lifetime Achievement Award had declined in the past, then today this award had become even more glorious because of Qin Guang. Then, as the video of President Fred's public speech was released, Qin Guang was instantly rewarded with the Oscars for Best Picture, Best Actor and Lifetime Achievement. No one had expected the big shots of the Oscar committee to go to such extremes. They would either not do it or they would do it all in one go. They decided to award 3 awards to Qin Guang in advance. They did not have to wait until the award ceremony to announce them to the public. What was even more outrageous was that no one in the world objected to it at all. Qin Guang took a deep breath and closed his eyes. His mind sank into the world in the cup again. He stood in the middle of Cloud City and looked up at one of the 3,000 empty platforms on the city wall. This platform was right next to the statue of the language master, which was right next to the sphere. An overwhelming amount of faith points flew in from all directions of the cup realm without any warning and landed on it. In the blink of an eye, a blurry shadow appeared. It was roughly the shape of a human. The facial features and outline of the human figure gradually became clearer, and the light became more and more intense. After a long time, when the light dissipated, a huge statue of 100 feet tall stood proudly on the platform. It was Qin Guang himself. The statue of the god of acting had finally appeared. Qin Guang flew up and stood under the statue. He looked up, but he did not know what to feel. It wasn't that Qin Guang was stunned by the statue that looked exactly like him, but he noticed that the statue's expression was very strange. It seemed to be expressionless, but at a glance, it seemed that the statue was sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, sometimes angry and sometimes proud. The dull face of the statue seemed to be filled with all the expressions of a human. Qin Guang thought to himself, as expected of the statue of the god of acting. The Holy Grail really was a roundworm in his stomach. Even the statue that it randomly captured was so exquisite. Alright, I almost forgot, I can still change the appearance once. Qin Guang rolled his eyes. Make me more handsome. The statue's appearance changed slightly again. Every detail of its face was slightly modified. But if you looked closely, you would find that it had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, and it was full of heroic spirit. After showing off for a while, Qin Guang sorted out his faith points production. The statue of the god of acting did not let him down. Its production was directly maxed out, reaching 533333. Of course, this was also due to the constant growth of Lu Ming's fruit trees, which allowed the production of all the statues to steadily increase. Up to now, among the 8 statues of the Holy Spirit, only the pile driver statue that could not be improved maintained its daily production of 38,000. The other 7 statues were constantly improving with the growth of Lu Ming, reaching this number of 53,333. At the same time, the statue of the language master's cup realm and the statue of the god of acting were 10 times the upper limit of the Holy Spirit statue, which was exactly 533333. Adding the additional faith points from the Sea of Time and the realm of True Martial, as well as the fanatics, Qin Guang's daily production of faith points was as high as 1.59 million per day. But unfortunately, the huge mortgage loan he owed was still as high as 1.43 billion. With the current production, it would take him 903 days to repay the loan. But there was only 1 year and 11 months left for him, exactly 700 days. To borrow a phrase often used on the Chinese national football team, there was not much time left for Qin Guang. He was still very desperate. He still had to quickly finish the 3rd statue of the god of one line, the strongest physical body. In fact, in a strict sense, it should be the strongest leg muscle group. The realm of True Martial that cast his strongest martial arts was not the one-line sky, but the 4th level, the blue sky. Currently, the only thing that could be used to obtain the statue of God was the one-line sky training related to the leg muscles during the accelerated physical body formation. Apart from the special training that was done in batches, he had done it before. Of course, the easiest way was to get it all at once and achieve all the strongest physical bodies so that it could be done once and for all. With a complicated mood, Qin Guang retreated from the cup realm. Seeing that he was clean from head to toe, he had to pick up the cup and sneak back to the room like a thief. After changing into pajamas, Qin Guang lay on the bed and thought for a while. He didn't have to worry about the photocatalyst anymore. He could just leave it to Teacher Zhua. He didn't even have to worry about the application for the Scientific and Technological Progress Award at Tangshan Industrial Factory. He had sold a big favor to the Chinese Academy of Sciences. The final decision on the award was in the hands of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. As long as the finished product was taken out and put into practice at Tangshan Industrial Factory, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection would completely turn over. There was nothing for him to do here. When Sister Tang Ying arrived in Los Angeles, he would go back to China with her. The next day, Qin Guang held his last press conference in America. At this press conference, he received the 3 trophies that had been made in advance from President Fred. He expressed his gratitude and promised to attend the final award ceremony in March. In the afternoon, he went straight to the airport, ready to meet Tang Ying there, and then fly straight back to China. After waiting in the airport for a long time, Qin Guang saw Tang Ying and Tang Xiaokai walking side by side. "Yo, Sister Tang Ying, Brother Xiaokai. Why are you here?" Qin Guang greeted the two with a smile. Although Tang Xiaokai was actually a few years older than him, they were now familiar with each other. Qin Guang didn't care so much. Tang Xiaokai looked at Qin Guang and Tang Ying, who stood side by side. "I'm my sister's protector. I'm here to keep an eye on you, Brother Guang." Tang Ying stepped on Tang Xiaokai's foot. "Shut up." Tang Xiaokai still refused to let it go. "Sister, don't quibble. I've seen through your little tricks long ago. Have you forgotten? I've been calling Qin Guang brother-in-law for a long time." Qin Guang was secretly pleased at being called brother-in-law, but when he saw Tang Ying blushing, he couldn't admit it now. "Don't talk nonsense. You must have something to tell me today." Tang Xiaokai was a busy man. He wouldn't come to a temple without a reason. He didn't have anything to do today, but he came. "I knew I couldn't hide it from you." Tang Xiaokai shrugged. "I do have something to ask of you." "All right, you two take your time. I still have to change my boarding pass." Dr. Tang was not like Qin Guang, who had the Global Civil Aviation Association's Hero Medal. He could pick his seat no matter where he went. He had to do all the registration and ticket changes himself. While Tang Ying went to change her boarding pass, Qin Guang and Tang Xiaokai had a simple chat. It turned out that Tang Xiaokai had his eyes on Qin Guang's photocatalyst. They were all on the same side and Qin Guang was easy to talk to. After some communication, Qin Guang accepted Tang Xiaokai's suggestion. Morning Light Group, which was independent of Qin Guang Group, was officially launched. It temporarily included 2 major sectors. First, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection would be renamed to Morning Light Environmental Protection. The main business would remain the same, and the operation management and investment of the sewage treatment plant would be the direction of development. Second, the photocatalyst laboratory currently being built by Zhuojingxi would be officially named Morning Light Laboratory. Its main business would be the research and development of photocatalysts. Looking at Tang Ying, who was busy changing her boarding pass, Qin Guang started to ponder in his heart. The biological research facility that Tang Ying established with the Wujing University and Moreland's Institute of Medicine was mainly based on his genes. So it wouldn't be appropriate for him to ignore it. Why don't I fork out a portion of the money and become a major shareholder? If it was just Sister Tang Ying, it would be fine. But if she wanted to use my genes as a sample, the school and Moreland's Medical College would benefit for nothing. As for Tang Xiaokai's request, it was not complicated. He would not directly own shares in Morning Light Environmental Protection. Instead, he would represent the Tang Jie Foundation and form a separate company. Its main business scope was to promote the technology and results produced by Morning Light Laboratory to the world. It was essentially a sales company. This way, Zhuojingxi could focus more on research and not worry about other things. After all, the products needed to be sold around the world through other people's hands. Although Qin Guang's technology had a monopoly advantage, the market management could not be ignored. As for Tang Xiaokai's marketing ability and character, Qin Guang trusted him. Just like that, the two of them only spent 20 minutes discussing this important matter. On the other side, Tang Ying had already changed her ticket and was walking over. She was a little unhappy. "I'm so angry. I originally booked a first-class seat, but it was inexplicably gone. I can't even change to business class, so I can only sit in economy class." Qin Guang comforted her. It's okay, it's okay. I'll also change to economy class and sit next to you. First class can't prolong my life. Tang Ying pouted. That's true, but Meizhong Airlines gave me economy class without my consent. They didn't even inform me in advance. This is not right. Chapter 11:28. Qin Guang was also a little unhappy. Previously, the two of them had agreed to return to China together. Tang Ying had booked a seat first, and he had called the Civil Aviation Administration to book a seat next to Tang Ying. Originally, the two of them had agreed to sit side by side in the first-class cabin. With such a long flight, they might even be able to take the opportunity to do it like before. They might even be able to do something else. But now it was all over. Tang Ying had been transferred to economy class. Meizhong Airlines was clearly not giving him any face. Alright, he and Tang Ying had booked their tickets separately, so Meizhong Airlines might not be aware of their relationship. Since Qin Guang had taken quite a bit of advantage from the civil aviation industry, he felt that it wasn't a crime to be ignorant. Hence, there's no need for him to make a fuss over such a small matter, and he decided to let people off the hook whenever possible. In the past, he had always cut the queue and snatched other people's seats without paying. God knows how many people had been forced to descend because of his sudden whim. As the saying goes, those who do evil will bring about their own destruction. He had done too many bad things and could not avoid retribution. Although the retribution for the descent did not fall on his head, it was the same thing for Tang Ying. I have to help the airline company appease the angry passengers. With that thought in mind, his butt was crooked. I'm going to call their boss later. Calm down. Sister Tang Ying, calm down first. As he spoke, he patted Tang Ying's shoulder. Tang Ying glared at him. Why are you still speaking up for the airline company? Chuckling, Qin Guang replied, How can you put it that way? I'm not speaking up for them. In fact, I used to cause people to descend often. Let's be more understanding. The seats in economy class are a little narrow, and we can sit close together. It's fine. Forget it. I'm not that spoiled. I've even bought a special ticket that Eastern Airlines doesn't have. I'm just a little unhappy that they surrendered without saying a word. Tang Ying rolled her eyes and waved her hand. That's right. They are of low standards. I will really get the Civil Aviation Association to reprimand Meizhong Airlines staff, okay? Qin Guang added. At this time, Tang Xiaokai, who was next to her, also helped to absolve her. That's right. I also know the global vice president of American Airlines. Sis, I'll help you redress this injustice. But don't worry about it today. You don't like to be special. Their airlines have always done things like this. Pan Am is slightly better, but American Airlines service attitude in this area is indeed problematic. All right. Look at the two of you. You make it sound like I'm the one who's unruly and willful. The three of them chatted for a while. Tang Xiaokai had other things to do in Los Angeles, so he left first. There was still some time before takeoff, so Qin Guang and Tang Ying found a cafe in the airport lobby and sat down. After that, he called the Civil Aviation Association specialist, who specialized in serving the highest-level VIP customers, to voluntarily downgrade from first class to economy class. Recipients of the Hero Medal had a higher priority than VIP customers. As soon as Qin Guang made the call, he naturally received the highest level of service. He enjoyed the same or even better treatment as top billionaires like Buffett, Gates, and Zuckerberg when they took private flights on commercial airliners. There was an extremely high level of confidentiality, even higher than that of ordinary U.S. government officials. Only the specialist who personally adjusted the seat for him knew what was going on, who wanted to change the seat and how it was done. In addition, because Qin Guang's own reputation was too resounding recently, he did not want to cause too much of a stir when he returned to China. Therefore, when he contacted the specialist, he took the initiative to further increase the level of confidentiality. As for American Airlines, the highest-level security certification department knew the specific details. However, due to the confidentiality agreement, they would not immediately inform the Los Angeles airport and the ordinary staff on Qin Guang's flight. They did not need to know why, nor did they need to know who wanted to change the seat. They only needed to execute and implement it. The highest responsibility of the entire aviation safety system was the Safety Committee. With the Safety Committee's stamp of approval, the passenger's identity was already foolproof. When the passenger's identity was verified for the last time before departure, they could see the name Qin Guang, but before that they were not qualified to check it in advance. Downgrading was difficult and it was easy to offend people. However, allowing a lone passenger to be upgraded from economy class to first class for free was simply a matter of a phone call. What's more, in order to ensure that nothing went wrong with the seat, Qin Guang even took the initiative to provide the passenger with $2,000 in cash as compensation. After waiting for about an hour, the two finally got on the plane. Tang Ying stuffed her carry-on bag under her feet and complained unhappily, "I should have put my bag in the suitcase. Economy class is too narrow." Qin Guang wasn't any better than her. He also had a bag with him which he used to store his laptop and the omnipotent Holy Grail. "Look at you, Sister Tang Ying. One look and I can tell that you've never lived a poor life. Don't even mention economy class. A year ago, when I was as poor as a doornail, I went to another city to do part-time work. I couldn't afford a berth and I couldn't even get a seat ticket. All I could buy was a standing ticket and squat in the green train aisle for a whole night. What's this today?" Tang Ying pinched Qin Guang's waist in annoyance. "You're the only one who has a lot of life experience, okay?" I don't deserve it." Qin Guang chuckled. "Sorry for not recognizing you. Sister Tang Ying, you're also very good. I used to think that the best doctors were in their 70s or 80s, but after meeting you, I realized that doctors in their 20s can also be so outstanding." Tang Ying was not moved by his flattery at all. "You have the cheek to say such things? I won't talk about your other things. I won't talk about you, the newly minted Oscar winner. Just the photo catalyst that you created a while ago was able to attract the attention of laboratories like Prince, Alamo, and Cambridge. Even if there were 10 of me, I wouldn't be able to match your achievements. I think you're mocking me." Qin Guang was embarrassed by her praise. Shoo, lower your voice. Don't let anyone recognize me." As he said that, he desperately pulled the brim of his hat down to cover his face, and then he pretended to be modest. "Don't praise me anymore. If you continue to brag, I'll be in heaven." "Brag?" Tang Ying turned around and looked at him with a playful look. "You're not serious, kid." Qin Guang felt wronged. "I'm very serious, okay? I know you're still thinking about the past. You're not serious when you get on the plane. You're still bragging? Going to heaven? You're still calling yourself serious? Have you no shame? Brag." As she said that, she deliberately pouted her lips and made a very meaningful gesture. Qin Guang, Sister Tang Ying's sudden burst of unorthodox ideas was a little sharp. Okay, I'll stop joking with you. If it wasn't for the fact that we're in economy class and there are people next to us, I really didn't intend to let you off. I'm a professional medical researcher, and I'm actually left in the dust by a half-baked person like you in terms of knowledge. I really can't accept this. Don't worry, wait for me to collect more samples from you and decipher your genetic code. In the future, all of humanity will remember my contribution. Who knows, maybe you're hiding the secret to the next stage of human evolution. If I achieve my goal, I can be even greater than Darwin." Tang Ying, who was sitting near the aisle, whispered into Qin Guang's ear on her right. Qin Guang had a very unique feeling. She was clearly talking about a very great and noble goal, but his heart was in turmoil as if it was being scratched by a cat's paw. "Okay, then I, as a lab rat, will have to risk my life to accompany you." Qin Guang didn't want to be someone else's lab rat, but if it was Tang Ying, then he didn't mind. Everyone was so familiar with each other, they met when they were down, their relationship was extraordinary, and Tang Ying's sample collection process was so... "Oh yeah, one more thing. Sister Tang Ying, how much is the initial investment for your research institute? Will Gokyo University and Moorlands each pay half?" Qin Guang asked as they whispered to each other. Tang Ying stomped her feet in anger. "Stop it, I'm angry when you mention it. My saliva is almost dry. No matter what I say, I made it very clear that if you want to build a biomedical laboratory of a sufficient level, just the purchase of the most basic equipment and instruments will cost at least $50 million. This does not include the other construction costs of purchasing land in the 5 capitals and the cost of manpower." Qin Guang scratched his head. "Is just studying my genes, is there a need for such a big deal?" "Tang Ying, in genomics there's not much difference between studying a person and studying a pig." "I think you're scolding me. You can think whatever you want. If it's just a human genomics experiment, the workload won't be too big, but you're too different from ordinary people. I think it's very likely that more than 10% of your genes will have to be remeasured. That's not a big workload, right? A person has 3 billion base pairs. That's not a big workload? Okay, it's a lot. That's why I'm very angry. My alma mater, Moorlands and Gokyo University, are too stingy. It's not a problem for them to provide manpower, but when it comes to money, they're all misers. They can't even give me $20 million. Then why don't you provide your own money?" Tang Ying shrugged. Do you think I didn't ask Xiao Kai and my dad? They don't agree. They all know that genomics is actually doing public welfare for humanity. It's purely a waste of money. They look like they care more about money than their lives. They're all businessmen. How can you talk about your father and brother like that? Aren't they very generous to me? That's because investing in you has a greater profit, okay? Forget it, anyway, let's leave it at that for now. 20 million US dollars, I'll reluctantly set up the framework. I'll take it one step at a time. However, Qin Guang smiled meaningfully. Sister Tang Ying, in my humble opinion, you've forgotten a very important thing. What? The person sitting next to you is probably the #1 nouveau riche of this year. He's lacking in everything now, but he's not lacking in money. Tang Ying's eyes gradually lit up. Hey, why didn't I think of that earlier? Qin Guang continued to chuckle. 50 million US dollars? What is this? It's not that I'm bragging, but I can even take out 500 million now. He really wasn't joking. Although the cost of coming to America was not small, the income was even higher. The box office of the movie, the development of Romeo and Juliet, and the crazily selling World's Pie, were all living old hens that could lay golden eggs. While the two were chatting happily, they were puzzled as to why the plane was still not taking off. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the aisle. Tang Ying straightened her head and craned her neck to look behind her. What's going on? Standing in the aisle were two burly male airport staff. The two of them walked along the rows of seats and raised their heads to meet Tang Ying's gaze. Then the two men's eyes lit up. They stopped counting and walked over with large strides. One of the burly black men said loudly in a low, muffled voice, "This Chinese lady, oh, and this Chinese man next to you, please leave the plane." The white man next to him added, "Sorry, our tickets are oversold." Tang Ying was stunned. She had been flying for so many years and had encountered situations where she couldn't board a plane because of oversold tickets. But that had never happened to her before. Besides, if it was really oversold, she wouldn't even be able to get a boarding pass. She had never heard of an oversold ticket when the person was already on the plane. *T. Chapter 1129. It was not until the two men walked along the aisle and stood in front of Tang Ying and stared down at her from above that Tang Ying was convinced that such a strange thing had really happened to her. But she still could not accept it. She raised her head and pointed at her face. "Are you talking about me? Oversold? You want us to get off the plane?" Tang Ying turned to look at Qin Guang beside her. She felt an indescribable pain in her balls. Did he forget about being demoted from first class to economy class? In any case, he could fly back to China. At most, he would complain about American Airlines' rudeness and contempt for its customers in his circle of friends when he got back. But now, even economy class was gone. She could only say that she had run into trouble. She had to attend a meeting at the city hospital tomorrow morning and hand over the last of her work. In the afternoon, she had to attend a meeting with the leaders of Gokyo University School of Medicine, Dachuan's Department of Science and Technology, China's Ministry of Science and Technology, and the leaders of the Ministry of Education would all attend the meeting to discuss the specific details of investing in the establishment of a national biomedical laboratory. If she could not get on the plane this afternoon, then tomorrow's meeting would be over. This pigeon had been placed too far and the joke had been made too big. Qin Guang was about to get up when Tang Ying pressed his shoulder down. "Don't say anything. I want to see what American Airlines is planning to do today." Tang Ying did not want Qin Guang to step in. The reason was simple. She was already furious when she was demoted. Qin Guang had comforted her and forced her to tolerate it. Now that American Airlines was here to cause trouble again, she could not tolerate it. Tang Ying felt that with Qin Guang's current fame and reputation, especially after knowing his status in the civil aviation industry, if Qin Guang showed his face, these guys who had been disgusting her would immediately bow and apologize. When that time came, one would not hit a smiling face. It would not be good to scold them. In addition, the furious Tang Ying was also curious as to what kind of interesting explanation the people from Meizhong Airlines could give to get her to descend and then kick her off the plane within a day. The two sturdy staff members looked curiously at Qin Guang, who was sitting next to them with a cap covering his face. According to the information, these two passengers did not book their seats at the same time. It seemed like they knew each other? Forget it, that's not important. A special ticket and a compensation ticket for lowering the cabin. They're not important people, so it doesn't matter whether I know them or not. Tang Ying stood up abruptly. "You have to give me an explanation. I originally bought a first-class ticket, but you guys downgraded it to economy class. I can't be bothered to bicker with you. But as far as I know, You can't even get a boarding pass with an oversold ticket. This is not oversold at all. Faced with Tang Ying's rage, the Caucasian worker's expression didn't change. Miss from China, please calm down and cooperate with us. This was indeed overselling tickets. Please leave the plane immediately. Your emotions are out of control and we can consider you as a threat to aviation safety. If necessary, we will take measures to force you off the plane. Impossible. I don't accept your reason. Tang Ying rebutted him right away. I don't even accept your reason for overselling tickets, and you want me to get off the plane? What about my meeting tomorrow? How am I going to explain myself? Seeing this, another black staff member pretended to take out a book from the side and flipped through the information on it. Madam Tang, on behalf of American Airlines, I am officially notifying you to depart from flight MZ878 immediately. We are deeply sorry for the trouble our company has caused you by overselling tickets. However, please cooperate with us. Also, the man next to you, in short, please leave the plane immediately. After that, he closed the book again, representing American Airlines to issue an official notice to Chen Guang and Tang Ying. However, there was one thing that was strange. The information in his hand did not show Chen Guang's name. He thought it was a mistake on the part of his colleague, but it didn't matter. How could they have known that Chen Guang's so-called special ticket was not a special price, but a free one? It was just that when Chen Guang took the initiative to descend for the sake of confidentiality, the safety committee had set it as a special ticket for him. Of course, Tang Ying couldn't agree to it. Impossible. You Mei Zhonghang have gone too far. Get your manager here. Get your person in charge here. There are so many passengers on the plane, why must it be us? The white worker took a step forward. Miss Tang, you'd better control yourself on the plane. We can compensate each of you with $400. That's not a small amount for you Chinese. At this time, someone interrupted, stop compensating. I only compensated you like this once last year. $400? It's 8 $50 coupons and you can only use one each time you buy a ticket. Plus, it expires after a year. What's $400? With Tang Ying's net worth, she wouldn't even bat an eye if $4,000 was placed in front of her, let alone 8 ridiculous coupons. Impossible, I won't accept your compensation. Whoever wants it can go. We're not getting off the plane anyway. Tang Ying waved her hand and firmly refused. The faces of the two staff members gradually darkened. The white man clenched his fists tightly. Tang Ying wasn't afraid at all. Chen Guang was right behind her. Tang Ying knew how capable this kid was. She was sure that if this white man dared to throw a punch, he would be the one flying. The black worker pulled his colleague back a little. Miss Tang, I'll remind you for the last time. If you don't cooperate with us, you will be listed as an unwelcome guest by American Airlines. In addition, we will also submit your name to the Aviation Association. Also, as a Chinese national, you will be restricted from entering the country. Do you understand what I mean? I'm afraid you won't be able to come to America in the future. The white worker also suppressed his anger. That's right. Also, there are indeed many passengers in the cabin. We're very sorry about the overbooking, but the selection of passengers will be randomly selected by our system. Everyone can be selected. This is very fair for all passengers. You see, we need a total of 4 passengers to get off the plane. Apart from the 2 of you, there are 2 more passengers. At this time, the other passengers on the plane seemed to be a little impatient. They all began to chime in one after another. That's right. The airline company won't mess around. Hurry up and get off the plane. Don't waste everyone's time. It's all your own bad luck. You guys were selected. What else is there to say? If I was the one who was selected, we would have left the plane on our own. This is a plane, not a car at home. It's every passenger's duty to abide by the airline's rules. Most of the people who were making sarcastic remarks were seemingly warm-hearted, but in fact, they were very selfish international friends. There were also some Chinese people on the plane, but they didn't say much. Seeing their compatriots in trouble, they were also quite unhappy. There are 2 more people? Randomly selected? Tang Ying frowned. She didn't believe the explanation of the 2 workers at all. She and Chen Guang booked their tickets separately. Moreover, Chen Guang had just descended from the cabin. In the end, they were picked out together. If it was purely random, it would be a small event with a probability of 1% multiplied by 1%. One could win 5 million in the lottery. The white worker nodded coldly. Of course it's random. It's very fair. After that, he stretched his neck and shouted, Mr. Tao in seat D of the 9th row, Ms. Luo in seat E, please cooperate. Due to overbooking, you also need to leave the plane. Then he turned to look at Tang Ying. Miss Tang, as you can see, there are a total of 4 passengers. They have been selected fairly and fairly by our American Airlines system. Now, I'm issuing a final ultimatum. You must leave flight MZ878 immediately. Otherwise, we will take forced relocation measures. Your immature behavior is very troubling to us. Tang Ying almost laughed out loud. She was stunned. There were more than 200 passengers in the cabin, and less than a fifth of them were Asian. Was there something wrong with the machine? Just from the names, it was obvious that the other 2 unlucky people were also Chinese. All 4 of them were randomly selected. This guy was actually bragging about how fair and open their system was without batting an eyelid? Qin Guang, who was sitting next to her, was also stunned. He had always thought that the thickness of his skin could be ranked in the top 10 in the world. Now he realized how naive he was. There was always someone better than him out there. One could not underestimate the heroes of the world. When it came to shamelessness, international friends were the strongest in this aspect. This is impossible. I want to contact my lawyer. Don't try to fool me with your overbooking and random system. Dream on. On the other side, the black staff was approaching the other 2 overbooked passengers, but Tang Ying slumped down. The white worker looked down at Tang Ying coldly. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he sneered and turned his head to walk further inside. On the other side, the 2 passengers who were also overbooked started arguing. Obviously, only white and black people would believe in the so-called fairness of the American Airlines system. No one was willing to be refused. It seems that our work today is not going well. Both groups of people refused to get off the plane. The 2 workers could not help but be particularly angry. I'll give you 5 more minutes to think about it. After that, you will be relocated. Whether you accept it or not, Pierce, let's go. The white man waved his hand. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Now you know what they're trying to do, right? Qin Guang quietly adjusted his hat. If you had asked me to step in earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Tang Ying was still angry. It's fine. It's the same even if you step in now. Qin Guang shook his head. I just looked it up online and found something very interesting. What is it? Chinese people have been overbooked for many years. You know what I mean. Qin Guang lowered his hat and grinned. If I didn't know about it, it would have been fine. But since I've seen it, I feel that since I've become quite famous in America recently, I might as well make a bigger deal out of it. Tang Ying asked, You want to do something for the Chinese people? Qin Guang shrugged. I'm not that great. It's just one thing. How much can I do? It's nothing more than to make them suffer a little, lest they think that yellow people are easy to bully. They've pissed us off and we don't like them either. Let's teach them a lesson. As he spoke, Qin Guang took out a pair of sunglasses and a mask from his bag and put them on his face. Things might get out of hand later. You don't have to step in. I'll do it. Qin Guang did not intend to make a big deal out of it. He thought that he could settle the whole thing with a phone call. Regardless of whether American Airlines was really overbooked or whether they really had to disembark the plane, if Qin Guang called the International Civil Aviation Association, there was no way they could not even get a seat. Even if someone really had to disembark the plane, it would not be him and Tang Ying. However, it happened right in front of him. The so-called fair and impartial random selection turned out to be people with the same skin color as him. He could not tolerate that. Qin Guang thought about the hardships he had faced since he came to America. Just because he was from China and was Chinese, how much resistance did he have to face from the start? If it were not for his nationality, if it were not for the fact that he was from China, how could the process of getting an Oscar be so difficult? Perhaps he would have been recognized by the world long ago if he had not even used half of what he had done. Although the compensation offered by President Fred and the others was impressive, it was still Qin Guang's ability that had thoroughly convinced them. Qin Guang's performance was simply too perfect, to the point of being impeccable. However, before that, their resistance and rejection had made Qin Guang's life very difficult. If Qin Guang's abilities were just a little bit weaker, if he showed even the slightest flaw to others, it was very likely that his Oscar would go down the drain. At the end of the day, it was still because the Wuxia people lacked the right to speak in America or even in the world. They were not valued and trusted. Even other colored people might not be able to compare. Talking about today's oversale, it was even more obvious. American Airlines was clearly targeting Asians, especially the Wuxia people. Especially now, there were still cold remarks coming from all directions. Most of them were saying that the Wuxia people did not follow the rules, were barbaric, and were wasting everyone's time. Qin Guang only sneered in his heart. Whatever you say, don't even think about flying today. Sigh. Since you want to do something big, then we probably can't fly today, right? Too bad, my meeting tomorrow, sigh. Qin Guang comforted him. It's okay, we can fly today. I promise you'll be able to step on our country's soil before 9 tomorrow morning, okay? That's not possible, right? Qin Guang shrugged. American Airlines isn't the only company that flies to Wujing. We'll pay for a jet from another company, it'll be the same. Qin Guang? Tang Ying number 1. Let's stop flattering each other. Yo, you're back again and you even got help. As Tang Ying spoke, he looked up and saw a large group of people walking in from the aisle. In addition to the two guys just now, there were several uniformed people with guns. The staff of American Airlines directly called the airport police. It seemed that they were really going to take the so-called forced relocation measures. Passengers, please exercise restraint and do not record. Now, we will begin to take coercive measures against illegal passengers who do not cooperate. The Caucasian staff was more confident because he had someone behind him. He took the lead and spoke loudly. After he finished speaking, he picked up the walkie-talkie and said, Mr. Schultz, I'm starting here. Good, you've done a great job. We should teach these uncooperative, immature and irrational passengers a lesson. Schultz, the general manager of American Airlines who was in charge of Los Angeles airport affairs, said so. This young second-generation heir had recently taken over American Airlines business in Los Angeles under the arrangement of his father, who was a senior executive of American Airlines. He was planning to do something to build prestige among the staff, and he felt that this was a good opportunity. Several tall and strong police officers approached quickly, and many passengers who were watching the fun raised their phones. Not many people were so obedient as to stop recording just like that. Qin Guang finally stood up and moved away from Tang Ying to stand in the aisle. He adjusted his sunglasses and adjusted his mask. I sincerely hope that after today you will remember something. Chapter 11:30. The Caucasian officer felt that something was wrong. The Chinese woman, who seemed to be very difficult to deal with just now, was now sitting quietly in her chair. But the man in the cap, who had been silently pretending to be dead, suddenly stood up. What was even more strange was that the man was wearing sunglasses and a mask, as if he couldn't see the light of day and was acting sneakily. It's ridiculous. Pretending to be a star as if he's afraid of being recognized. Where do you think you are? Maybe you're really a big shot in China, or maybe you're really famous, but this is the United States. No one will give you any face. The man didn't think that Qin Guang was a dangerous person. Although he still couldn't see Qin Guang's name, the passenger's information backup had been stamped by the National Security Committee. However, the airport's police officers didn't share the same thoughts. After all, Qin Guang didn't even dare to show his face to the police on the plane. In addition to the recent tense international situation, they were on full alert when they saw Qin Guang. Tang Ying didn't say anything else, but looked at Qin Guang's profile with great interest. She wanted to know how Qin Guang was going to make a big deal out of this. Qin Guang didn't have any particularly clever ideas. He just relied on the cap, sunglasses and mask, and used the simplest and most violent way of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Seeing them getting closer, Qin Guang didn't rush to make a move. He liked to be polite before resorting to force, so he had a good reason to do so. If you keep control, I'll be easy to talk to. If you pretend, I'll be better at it. The Caucasian officer was walking forward, but was suddenly pulled back by the airport police officer behind him. What's the matter? Officer Jack. The Caucasian officer turned around and asked. Nelson, are you sure this Chinese man's name is unknown on the passenger's information? Nelson nodded. I'm sure. I just confirmed it with Mr. Schultz. Officer Jack's eyebrows gradually furrowed. This is very strange. Now, I suspect that they may be terrorists. Mr. Schultz is the person in charge of your company in Los Angeles. Unless he's a special agent or official from the Department of Homeland Security, he won't be able to find his name before the flight, but this guy is Chinese. Nielsen's eyes lit up. He was indeed a smart police officer specially sent by Mr. Schultz to cooperate with him. If Nielsen still treated the man as an ordinary passenger, he would not be able to use some more extreme means. But if he labeled the man as a terrorist, he would suffer a lot. That's right, Officer Jack. When we were talking to them just now, this man behaved very strangely from beginning to end. He had been lowering the brim of his hat, as if he was afraid of being recognized by us. He was very suspicious. Also, his ticket information shows that it's a special fare ticket. Agents and officials won't buy a special fare ticket. They're all in first class. Pierce, the black man beside him, decisively dealt the finishing blow. Officer Jack nodded. All right, I know what to do. But later, don't show any obvious abnormalities. We're professionals and we'll handle it. Look at the back of his hand. The blood vessels are bulging as if they're going to explode. Although he doesn't look strong, in my experience people with this kind of physique have amazing explosive power. It's impossible to have this kind of physique without professional training. Jack was indeed a very professional and keen police officer. Ordinary people really couldn't see the threat of Chen Guang. The few of them were whispering from afar, thinking that no one could hear them. However, they never expected that Chen Guang had pricked up his ears and could hear every single word of theirs. It seemed that not only the international friends of American Airlines were not very kind, but the Los Angeles police seemed to be even more crazy. He hadn't done anything yet, but they had already put a big hat on him. After the discussion, these people continued to come here until they stood in front of Chen Guang. With his keen senses, Chen Guang noticed that the airport's police officers must be communicating with each other through some hand signals. They seemed to be standing casually, but they were positioned at an ingenious angle, hiding the guns on their waists on the other side of their bodies. The atmosphere on the scene seemed calm, but in fact, undercurrents were surging. Chen Guang's eyes narrowed slightly. It seemed that these people weren't just simply putting a hat on him. They really thought that he was a terrorist? Was that necessary? You were using the excuse of overbooking, but in fact, you were violating the rules to kick innocent passengers off the plane. You were deliberately targeting the Chinese and discriminating against me and my countrymen, but you pretended to say that it was a fair and random draw. Now, I didn't even say a word and you put a big hat on me. Do you really want to go against the law? Get off the plane, sir. And Miss Tang next to you, this is really the last time I'm warning you. You can still book your tickets for tomorrow. This is just a trivial matter. You don't have to pay a huge price for it. Nelson, who was standing behind Officer Jack, tilted his head and said loudly. Letting out a cough, Chen Guang replied through his mask, "This is the first time I'm replying to you, and it will also be the last time. We won't accept your explanation of overbooking and random selection, and I'm no longer interested in taking your plane. However, this matter won't end so easily. You think it's a trivial matter? You're telling me that it's a trivial matter to randomly select 4 Chinese people to kick off passengers who have already boarded the plane? Then what else is a trivial matter for the aviation industry? What? Are you threatening us? Can you say it again?" Officer Jack quietly put his hand behind his back and put his finger on his gun. He thought silently, is it a serious matter for the aviation industry? Apart from the air crash, it's probably a hijacking. Officer Jack's first impression of Chen Guang was the strongest. Now he inevitably extended this serious matter, in Chen Guang's words, to the hijacking of the plane. He was also shocked. He had never seen such an unscrupulous and crazy extremist. Not only was he not afraid in front of the police, but he even took the initiative to threaten them. Officer Jack felt that this person must be an extremist whose faith was beyond a certain level. He was the backbone of the organization and extremely dangerous. As for Chen Guang, the situation in front of him reminded him of a joke he often encountered when he was in countless fights since he was a child. Whenever someone said to someone, "If you have the guts, say it again," the other person would definitely say it again. The other person would definitely say something, and what was originally a trifling matter would immediately develop into a fist fight. The one who lost in a one-on-one fight would definitely call for help, and the other side wouldn't just admit defeat. That was how countless big and small group fights in the county came about. It was very likely that the earliest reason was that 2 kids accidentally bumped into each other while buying ice cream at the canteen. Eventually, it developed into a fight between 2 big gangs in the county. Chen Guang named it, "Say it again." Once this law was triggered, he couldn't back down. Therefore, his eyes behind the sunglasses narrowed even more. "Do you think I'm threatening you? Today's incident was caused by Mei Zhonghong's evil act of flouting the rules. Are you guys stupid? Or do you think everyone is as stupid as you? Do you think we don't know? The so-called overbooking, isn't it when your airline employees want to board the plane? Do you really think we don't know anything? When I was flying the plane, you guys didn't even know where you were. I didn't expose you just because we don't want to talk nonsense with you. Also, not everyone's time is as cheap as yours. Do you know how much loss we'll suffer if we delay our return by 1 day? If we really suffer heavy losses because of your unreasonable actions today, Mei Zhonghong can't escape the responsibility. Officer Jack, don't talk nonsense with him. Do it. There's less than 2 minutes before the departure time." The black man, Pierce, shouted from behind. Officer Jack's eyes flickered. and the other two police officers standing beside him reached out their hands to grab Qin Guang's arm. As for Officer Jack himself, he still had his body turned sideways, but his fist was already raised, aiming directly at Qin Guang's face. Either do not make a move or do it ruthlessly. This was the American police's routine when dealing with suspected extremists, to prevent all dangers before they happen. However, Qin Guang's expression did not change. He reached out his hand and slapped away the two men's hands. You guys started it first, so don't blame me for what happens next. Two loud bangs were heard, and the two police officers who reached out to grab Qin Guang's fists were slapped away as they screamed in pain. On the other side, before Qin Guang's voice died away, his hand that was still stretched out grabbed Officer Jack's fist, twisted it and pushed it backward. Officer Jack fell on his back and crashed into the white man Nelson behind him. I'm the one you bumped into today, so you can't take advantage of me. If it were someone else, wouldn't they be in big trouble? Qin Guang was still standing in the middle of the aisle, his expression unchanged. Officer Jack had just stood up and finally pulled out his gun, pointing it at Qin Guang. Put your hands up, you terrorist, or I'll shoot. Looking at the black muzzle in front of him, Qin Guang did not feel threatened at all. He was just annoyed. He was just taking a plane. Why did he have to cause so much trouble? Do you think I'm Hello Kitty if I don't show my power? Why don't you try shooting? As he spoke, he took a step forward toward the muzzle. Officer Jack saw this and quickly retreated. He was afraid that Qin Guang would take the gun, and he did not expect this mysterious man to be so arrogant in front of a gun. Even Tang Ying, who was behind him, became nervous and stood up abruptly. Qin Guang, don't be too impulsive. She shouted in Chinese, but Qin Guang made an okay gesture without turning his head and said, It's okay, their toy guns can't hurt me. Qin Guang did not believe that the other party would really shoot. Although he had heard that the American police were very overbearing, there should be a limit to how overbearing they could be, right? Chapter 1131. Nelson, who was at the back of the crowd, was shocked when he saw that Officer Jack's gun was useless. At the same time, he picked up the walkie-talkie and shouted, Mr. Schultz, this Chinese is very powerful. He has undergone special training and is dangerous. The situation in the plane is getting out of control. Schultz, who was watching TV in the airport office with his legs crossed, suddenly sat up straight. He was a little unhappy. It was just a temporary vacation for 4 American Airlines employees to travel to China, but they had caused so much trouble. Schultz blamed Nelson in his heart for not doing his job well. On the other hand, he was secretly happy. The more extreme the other party was, the more forceful measures he could take. If he could let his crew discover a real terrorist, his position in American Airlines would immediately be greatly consolidated. As for whether that person was really an extremist, was it important? Wasn't it always the airline that had the final say on these things? If I say you are, you are. Nelson, tell Officer Jack not to worry about anything. If anything happens, we, American Airlines, will take full responsibility. I, Schultz, will take full responsibility. Nelson, who was white, followed behind Officer Jack and conveyed Schultz's message. Officer Jack nodded calmly, still pointing his gun at Qin Guang. The other officers did the same and took out their weapons. As for the other passengers on the plane, they covered their heads and hid behind their seats when they saw that the situation was not good. Guns were legal in many states in the United States. Many people had one at home, so they were not too surprised by this. Some of the bolder ones hid behind their seats, but they still stuck their phones out from the back and pointed it at Qin Guang's direction. Mr. Tao and his wife, Ms. Luo, reacted the same as the others. It was supposed to be an ordinary oversold, but the moment the airport police pulled out their guns, things changed. I'm warning you for the last time. Chinese man. Put your hands up, or I'll shoot. Who are you? Why can't I see your name in the passenger file? After getting Schultz's guarantee from Nelson, Officer Jack was relieved. No matter how big the situation was, Schultz, whose father was a senior executive of American Airlines, should be able to control the situation. Schultz's subtext was also very clear. If necessary, they could even kill this Chinese man on the spot. Jack spoke loudly as he unlocked the safety without batting an eyelid. How could Qin Guang raise his hands? Things had escalated to this point and he was already being pointed at with a gun. It was time to take off his cap, sunglasses, and mask to let these ignorant and arrogant people know who he was. To be honest, pretending to be weak was not that great. It was a pity that a small matter had escalated to this point. Although he didn't suffer any substantial damage, his mood was still a little unhappy. Regardless of whether the gun was a threat or not, no matter who it was that was pointing it at them, they would not be happy. However, Qin Guang did not feel that his actions were meaningless. After all, he had to blow this matter up and make use of the influence of this matter to make American Airlines pay a painful price. It was akin to killing the chicken to warn the monkey. However, Qin Guang did not think that what he did was meaningless. He had to make a big deal out of this, and use the influence of this incident to make American Airlines pay a heavy price. This was only one of the aspects, but being able to see the big picture from the small would have a considerable degree of positive help in improving the status of the Chinese people in the world. Now that he had the ability and status in the Jianghu, he should spare no effort to do more for his countrymen. Although his ultimate principle was to treat people of all skin colors fairly, the Chinese were the ones suffering in Europe and America. It was never wrong to help one's own people first. If the Chinese, who had a higher social status, more power and more ability, did not fight for the rights of the people in their own country, how could a nation be more respected in the world? Just like in the past, the people in America could not afford to offend were black people. However, black rappers could even release songs to teach others how to rob the easiest Chinese. Qin Guang felt that although the strategy he adopted today might be too extreme, it was also the best strategy that could achieve the best results. He did not regret it. I'm really curious to see the expressions of the three guys, Nelson, Pierce and Jack, when they see my true face. Whether it was his reputation in the civil aviation industry, or his recent fame in America through Women and Romeo and Juliet, Qin Guang did not believe that the people on the plane would not recognize him. Alright, looks like there's no other way. Qin Guang shrugged, then reached for his sunglasses. Officer Jack was shocked. What are you doing? Stop. He was really nervous. Qin Guang's hand was suspended in mid-air. I'm going to take off my sunglasses and mask. Don't you want to know who I am? Unexpectedly, Officer Jack said again, we don't need to know who you are now. You just need to raise your hands immediately. Hearing those words, Qin Guang fell into silence. With so many people watching and so many cameras around, Qin Guang's gun was a toy in his eyes. He couldn't afford to lose face like this. He could not raise his hands, absolutely could not. Qin Guang did not care about him but still reached for his sunglasses. At this moment, a male flight attendant who had quietly sneaked behind Qin Guang suddenly pounced on him from behind and punched at the back of Qin Guang's head. The sound of wind came from behind. Qin Guang's ears twitched and he knew what was happening behind him. He bent his waist and avoided the guy's sneak attack with his head. Then Qin Guang bent his right leg from behind, and with a golden hook fishing for the moon, he kicked the male flight attendant's abdomen from the bottom up. What are you doing? Don't mess around. Officer Jack did not expect that the male flight attendant would be so bold to sneak attack Qin Guang, and he shouted. Just now, Qin Guang's simple movement repelled the three of them in an instant. Officer Jack knew that it was impossible to subdue this mysterious man with ordinary close combat. Although he shouted so, he still held the gun in his hands and pointed it straight ahead. However, because Qin Guang had already attached himself to the body, Officer Jack's muzzle was now pointed at the male flight attendant behind Qin Guang. Bang! At this critical moment, the Glock 18 in Officer Jack's hand, which had been in service for more than 10 years, accidentally discharged. After he opened the safety, he did not pull the trigger but directly fired. The loud sound rang through the cabin, and the timid female passengers screamed. The two staff members, Nelson and Pierce, trembled fiercely, and subconsciously wanted to hide to the side. As for Officer Jack himself and the other airport police officers behind him, their minds went blank for a short while. Officer Jack's heart was like dead ashes. In fact, he did not really want to shoot. At least, before this Wuxia man showed further aggressive behavior, he could not easily shoot. But he did not expect that the Glock, which was famous for its stability, would accidentally discharge at this time. What was more unfortunate was that he did not aim at this Wuxia man who was suspected to be an extremist, but at the chest of another male flight attendant who rashly attacked. He raised his head in despair and looked straight ahead. He thought he would see a scene of blood splattering. With the power of the Glock, a thumb-sized bloody hole should appear in the chest of the flight attendant at such a close range. But this scene did not happen. He only saw 2 fingers. Between these 2 fingers was the bullet that had just been accidentally discharged from the Glock. Smoke was still rising from the bullet. The fingers were clamped so tightly that the eggshell of the bullet was completely deformed, becoming the shape of an hourglass. The male flight attendant was completely scared, and he also stared at the scene in front of him. His eyes were also focused on the 2 fingers clamping the bullet. The few of them looked down again. The owner of the 2 fingers was bent over in a very twisted posture. His right hand was raised from behind his back, and the bullet was caught between the index and middle fingers of his right hand. Chen Guang stood up straight, raised his right hand in front of him, and then took off his sunglasses with his left hand. At the same time he tore off his mask, exposed his face and blew the smoke on it. He grinned and then sighed. Damn, I'm convinced. You really dared to shoot. I'm convinced. Chapter 1132. Jack, Nelson and Pierce stared at Chen Guang's face blankly. The air in the cabin was stagnant for a moment, but after the loud gunshot, it became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Their pupils contracted and their mouths opened wider and wider. Although Chen Guang was not known by everyone in the United States, almost everyone in the civil aviation industry in Los Angeles knew him. His posters were still hanging on countless downtown streets in Los Angeles, and even the billboards outside the airport halls had his face on them. Jack and the other officers had even gone to the cinema with their families on vacation yesterday, contributing to the box office of Women. In addition, the personal stories of the winners of the Hero Medal, as well as the improved pilot's operation manual compiled by Chen Guang himself, were still compulsory courses for every civil aviation staff. Not long ago, after the big shots of the civil aviation industry attended the premiere of Chen Guang's movie, the civil aviation industry launched a new round of learning activities in the company to coordinate with the release of Women, and to help Chen Guang promote the movie. The so-called learning activities, on the one hand, emphasized the importance of the new operation manual, and on the other hand, emphasized Chen Guang's contributions to the aviation industry, and hoped that the employees would take the initiative to support the real hero of the aviation industry in their spare time. At this moment, Jack was still holding his Glock, and the situation was very awkward and stiff. Mr. Right. Mr. Chin? Jack swallowed his saliva and asked in a trembling voice. After a brief moment of confusion, Nelson and Pierce began to step back silently. Oh no, this time it was really terrible. They randomly picked two Wuxia people and thought they were easy to bully, so they tried to oversell their cars, but they ended up bumping into the hero of the aviation industry, Chen Guang. Unfortunately, they didn't understand the Wuxia language, or they would have shouted, "The flood has broken the temple of the Dragon King." Mr. Chen, I'm sorry, we didn't expect it to be you. Nelson braced himself to stand out and apologize. No wonder he couldn't find any information on Chen Guang before. No wonder the security committee gave him a super-secret identification stamp. This had nothing to do with whether or not the extremists were hiding their identities. It was simply because the level of the Hero Medal recipient, Chen Guang, was too high. It wasn't something that he or even Mr. Schultz could easily access. Thinking of his and Pierce's previous attitude towards Chen Guang, and the fact that Jack pointed a gun at Chen Guang, Nelson carefully looked at Chen Guang's expression. He always felt that things might develop in an irreversible direction. If they were dealing with ordinary people, the powerful Aviation Association wouldn't be afraid of anyone, even if it was Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, although the probability of that happening was not high. But Nielsen knew that the Aviation Association would not easily bow down to anyone. They would even unite to become the strong support of American Airlines. But this time, in a sense, they were on the same side as the Aviation Association. They were the Hero Medal holders who had countless fans within the association and were highly respected by many of the association's powerful people. The Hero Medal was a very high honor, even more noble than the Oscars in the film industry and the Hall of Fame in the NBA. It's over, it's all over. Chen Guang first glared at Jack. Do you still want to point a gun at me? What, do you want to misfire again? Jack and the others hurried to clean up. The frightened male flight attendant behind Chen Guang said in an incredulous tone, I'm still alive? That's right, you're still alive. Chen Guang turned around. The male flight attendant first looked up at Chen Guang for a few seconds, and then quickly reacted like everyone else. My God, my God. Don't talk nonsense. Get out of the way. You make me very unhappy. I'm afraid you may die if I punch you. At this time, Chen Guang was full of anger. Obviously he would not be so easy to talk to. Although these people's attitude changed 180 degrees after being recognized, it did not help. He had been provoked and it would not be so easy to deal with it. Then he looked back at Jack and Nelson and the others. Come on, it's already like this. I don't care what you think of this matter today, but your rude behavior has greatly troubled me. As I said just now, I will not let it go. If you are afraid of my revenge, Jack, why don't you try to shoot me again? Let's see if you can kill me. Jack shook his head violently. How is this possible? I know it's you, Mr. Chin. How can I? Slap. Before he finished his words, Qin Guang slapped him hard in the face. So if it's not me but another Huaxia person, you can shoot at will because of your inexplicable speculation? Can we Huaxia people be slaughtered on the land of the United States? I have a lot to say, but I'm not interested in talking nonsense with you now. Let's talk in court. After Qin Guang finished speaking, he got up and looked at the other passengers on the plane indifferently. At this time he looked around and saw cell phone cameras everywhere. Someone had probably sent the video out. But he didn't care. He shrugged. Just now, when we were about to be forcibly relocated, no one in your oily land was willing to stand up for us. Now I can only apologize. Before this matter is resolved, Flight MZ-878 won't be able to take off smoothly. Congratulations, you're all overbooked. That's right, everyone on this plane is overbooked. When Qin Guang mentioned the word, oversold, he intentionally emphasized on his tone to make it seem like he was mocking Su Tao. Nelson's face changed dramatically. Of course he understood what Qin Guang said. The idea of dealing with this matter privately in his mind was instantly dispelled. After that, Qin Guang no longer paid any attention to them and sat back down before he gave a call to China Airlines. 2 minutes later he nodded with satisfaction. His own people were awesome. He got a private plane that belonged to him and could take off at any time. Officer Jack, who had been observing him and did not dare to leave, was a little relieved. Since Qin Guang had the intention to leave, it seemed that this matter could be over. But immediately Qin Guang made another call in front of them. This time he called Pizarro of Baker Law Firm. This was the territory of foreigners. Although Qin Guang wanted to make trouble, he did not intend to completely break the rules. Mr. Pizarro, that's all about the oversold matter. But I have another situation. As a lawful citizen who abides by the law, I was pointed at my head with a gun, and the gun was fired, almost killing me. How can I sue the other party in this situation? However, Qin Guang's words to Pizarro nearly made Nelson and the rest want to bang their heads against the wall. As for the person in charge, Schultz, who had just received the report, he was not much better at this time. As soon as all the ordinary passengers left, Schultz stumbled over. On the other side, the videos taken by many people had been posted on the internet with various titles from different angles. Qin Guang, the world's first performing artist, the world's first XX, and the winner of the Global Civil Aviation Hero Medal, encountered the so-called oversold in Los Angeles and was pointed at his head by the Los Angeles Airport Police. Furthermore, the gun had actually fired. However, he was not injured, and the male flight attendant who tried to sneak attack him did not die, because he caught the bullet with his fingers. Every factor in this was enough to become a breaking point, especially the last one. It took less than 20 minutes for these videos to appear on the internet and sweep across the entire social network. Because of this, countless people felt that they were bound by a common enemy, and they began to complain tearfully about American Airlines, a company with a notorious track record. At the same time, there were more people who accused the Los Angeles Airport Police, who had obviously been bribed by violence. Of course, the most unacceptable scene was the scene where Qin Guang caught the bullet with 2 fingers. Although this kind of thing was as common as eating and drinking soup in the eyes of people in Huaxia who knew Qin Guang, it was simply unbelievable in the eyes of ordinary Americans. They even felt that this was a movie. But this was not a movie, it was the news that was happening in Los Angeles Airport. This was a reality, not a movie. The explosion of public opinion in turn caused great pressure on American Airlines. Schultz, who was directly responsible for this matter, was dismissed on the spot. Even his father, who was also a senior executive of American Airlines, could not save him. Apart from that, Schultz was also ordered to apologize to Qin Guang, and now he came here in grievance. Mr. Qin, Schultz, who was about 1.8 meters tall and had a very strong body, stood in front of Qin Guang, but he was as shy as a child of a few years old. However, Qin Guang clearly heard the words he said through the walkie-talkie. Your name is Schultz, right? You said you can take full responsibility, right? Then why don't you take responsibility for me again? Come on, let me see how you plan to take responsibility for this matter. How does American Airlines plan to take responsibility for this matter? You must give me an explanation. If the person you met today was not me, but an ordinary Huaxia person, he should have died under your gun, right? Then what kind of title are you going to give to the deceased? Extremists? It was obvious that Qin Guang had no intention of negotiating with Schultz at all. After scolding this person, he asked him to leave. Just like what your American logic says, if an apology is useful, what's the point of having the police? When you asked someone to point a gun at me, you didn't expect to be struck by lightning instead of showing off, did you? Are you afraid now? Do you regret it? It's too late. Chapter 1133. After a while, the crew of MZ-878 came, but at the sight of Qin Guang's gloomy face, they didn't dare to say anything and ran away. Nelson, Pierce and Jack, the culprits, didn't dare to leave the plane. Instead, they waited in the aisle of the cabin, waiting for their punishment. I think it's enough. Now that the scandal has been exposed, they must have learned their lesson. How about we change planes and go back to China? Said Tang Ying, browsing the news on her mobile phone. She didn't sympathize with these people but felt that it was enough. The earlier they left, the earlier they could go back to China. After all, there was such an important meeting tomorrow. Qin Guang was also playing with his mobile phone. From time to time he looked up at Nelson and the others in the distance. Then he shook his head and said, "Don't worry. It's still early. Do you think we're done? Believe me, the airline is more shameless than we think." After waiting for about half an hour, Mr. Donder, the representative of Baker and Associates in Los Angeles, a well-known lawyer who was on par with Pizarro and was known as one of the top 10 lawyers in U.S. aviation cases, came with 2 assistants and a briefcase under his armpit. As the largest law firm in the United States, it had the most professional lawyers in all aspects. The nearly $2 million that Qin Guang had paid to Baker and Associates had been transferred by Pizarro into the annual legal consulting fee for Baker and Associates. On the surface, it seemed that Pizarro had done Qin Guang a favor. Obviously, he had only paid for the lawsuit against Prince, but he had become an employee of Baker and Associates. But that was not necessarily the case. Next year, if Qin Guang still wanted to enjoy the legal services provided by Baker and Associates, he would have to continue to pay the fees. He would sacrifice his short-term interests, but he could get long-term benefits from Qin Guang. Pizarro, the lawyer, had a considerable degree of autonomy. He believed that he was a good judge of character and knew Qin Guang's character. For these new tycoons, in the words of the Wuxia people, they were loyal. If the partner was loyal to him and satisfied him, then he would not easily change the partner out of vulgar considerations of benefits. Now that the Qin Guang group represented by Qin Guang was growing stronger by the day, coupled with his recent involvement in the field of photocatalysis, Qin Guang himself was a rising star that couldn't be ignored in the world. If they could reach a long-term partnership with him on a global scale, the business benefits it represented would be unimaginably huge. Donder raised his proud head and walked to Qin Guang under the desperate eyes of Nelson and the others. He then took out a tablet from his bag and opened a document in front of Qin Guang, saying, "Mr. Qin, this is the lawyer's letter that we've just prepared. Please have a look." Qin Guang glanced around and was very satisfied with the professionalism of the Baker law firm. In this brief lawyer's letter, American Airlines' bad attitude and illegal practices in this overselling incident were concisely and comprehensively explained in detail. The letter started from the authenticity of the overbooking, to the reasonableness of forcing the passengers who had already boarded the plane to get off, and then to the so-called random drawing, which turned out to be 4 Chinese people. There might even be some under-the-table operation. The Baker law firm believed that American Airlines' behavior was suspected of racial discrimination. Moreover, after being opposed and boycotted by the passengers, the coercive measures taken by American Airlines and the Los Angeles Airport Police were also very problematic. They framed the important passengers who had been certified by the safety committee as extremists, pulled out a gun in public and even fired. No matter what, they had fired. Now the bullet was still in the hands of the victim, Qin Guang. The evidence was conclusive and irrefutable. As Qin Guang waved his hand, Donder called the headquarters on the spot. Within 5 minutes at most, this lawyer's letter would appear in front of the senior management of American Airlines and the news media. What's more, Donder asked his assistant to take out a high-definition video camera from behind and directly record the video in the cabin in front of Qin Guang, preparing to use it as an online press conference. When Qin Guang contacted them before, he had made it very clear that he had to leave today, so he had no time to hold another press conference. However, it was just right to hold it here. The press conference only lasted for less than 10 minutes before Donder announced the end with a very meaningful smile. This matter will not end so easily. He was one of the best aviation litigation lawyers on the earth. This time, American Airlines and the Los Angeles Airport Police were completely unable to stand on their feet, so he could win the case without lying on the ground. According to the contract signed between the firm and Qin Guang, this kind of lawsuit was like lying on the ground and getting money. How could he not be happy? Nielsen and the others who had been watching the scene in a daze almost wanted to die. This time they had really kicked an iron plate, and it was a very hard iron plate. He was just like an iron hedgehog. As soon as the video of the press conference was sent out, the CEO of American Airlines finally called Qin Guang. Mr. Qin, I've got the details. I apologize to you on behalf of American Airlines, and I'm willing to pay you a lot of compensation. Let's call it a day. What do you think? The CEO's attitude was quite sincere. Qin Guang grinned. You don't have to apologize to me personally because I don't intend to forgive you at all. There was a moment of silence on the other side of the phone. Obviously, the CEO didn't expect that Qin Guang would be so tough even though he was so sincere. So what do you want, Mr. Qin? Qin Guang thought for a moment and said, you don't have to apologize to me alone. You should apologize to all the Chinese people who are being discriminated against by your company, or have been discriminated against in the past. You should also publicly promise that this kind of thing will never happen again. Of course, Meizhong Airlines will have to pay the compensation. Mr. Qin, I admit that you have made great contributions to the aviation industry, but don't you think you are asking too much? Don't you think you are being too aggressive? We will never apologize to any Chinese people for the overbooking incident. The interests of the employees in the aviation industry are above everything else. They put in a lot of hard work and should be respected. So you can take other people's seats at will? I don't care whether the employees or the customers are more important in your company's creed. What I care about most is that the so-called random selection results are all Chinese people. Besides, don't fool me with the ridiculous excuse of overbooking. I'm tired of hearing similar excuses today. You can only fool fools. You are discriminating against Chinese people, and this is the real reason why I don't accept your apology. Because you are completely wrong. Even now, you still don't realize where the real problem lies. Goodbye. After that, Qin Guang didn't give the CEO a chance to talk nonsense and immediately hung up the phone. Donder, the lawyer, gave Qin Guang a thumbs up. Well done, Mr. Qin. Your answer is great. It gives us the upper hand in the next lawsuit. Qin Guang shrugged. I didn't think about my answer carefully. It was just my most sincere thought. On the other side, in the office of American Airlines, the CEO was furious. On one hand, he accused the Schultz father and son of making trouble out of nothing and provoking people who shouldn't be provoked. On the other hand, he was angry because of Qin Guang's tough attitude. At the same time, many leading companies in the Aviation Industry Association called. Obviously, the video of the online press conference had been published on the internet. Everyone could see that Qin Guang planned to make a big deal out of this matter. Other companies couldn't help but sympathize with American Airlines, but they also felt that they deserved it. In the American aviation industry, employees of all companies had high status, but American Airlines was the most arrogant and unscrupulous. Their peers had already warned Mei Zhonghong, hoping that they would restrain themselves a little. However, Mei Zhonghong didn't take it seriously and continued to do as he pleased. He was even proud of it, so they could only say that they deserved it. Damn it, this is too much. The CEO hung up the sympathy phone call from others in the industry and turned around to see the public lawyer's letter and video press conference from Baker Law Firm on the internet. I won't give in so easily. 20 minutes later, he gave a public speech in the conference room of his company's headquarters. There weren't many media present, but for such a large company, it wasn't difficult to find some news mouthpieces. He made a clear statement to the public. Everything went according to Qin Guang's expectations. American Airlines refuted everything in the lawyer's letter. They refused to admit the truth about the oversale, nor did they admit that there was something fishy about the random selection. They only insisted that it was a small probability event, and it was just a coincidence. As for whether or not the law enforcement process was excessive, American Airlines didn't quibble because of the irrefutable witness and material evidence. They frankly admitted their mistake and expressed their willingness to publicly apologize and compensate to Qin Guang. But they firmly denied that there was any problem of illegal operation and discrimination in the whole incident. When Qin Guang and Tang Ying saw American Airlines reply, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening. At this moment, the two of them didn't sit in the cabin of MZ-878. Instead, they sat in the VIP lounge. Donder didn't leave. Instead, he stayed in this room with more assistants. They used this place as a temporary office. See, I knew it would be like this. Tang Ying couldn't help feeling a headache. This will become a protracted lawsuit. Even if you have the help of Baker Law Firm, it will definitely take a long time to collect evidence and argue in court. Discrimination is a very bad phenomenon. They won't admit it even if you beat them to death. Qin Guang smiled mysteriously. No, it's not troublesome at all. I can handle it today. Tang Ying was puzzled. What? Qin Guang craned his neck and looked at the direction of the door in the distance. The two culprits, Nelson and Pierce, were still waiting awkwardly with Schultz. American Airlines wouldn't give up trying to reach an understanding with Chen Guang through these three people until the last moment. As for Jack and his colleagues, they were temporarily relieved of their duties and detained. What awaited them was another lawsuit. They were suspected of several crimes such as duty-related crimes. Really, it's not troublesome at all. Chen Guang stood up. At the same time, he turned around and greeted Donder. "Mr. Donder, please take your assistant and equipment. We're going to talk to Schultz, the head of American Airlines in Los Angeles." Donder was shocked. He thought Chen Guang was going to let go, which hurt him a lot. "Mr. Chen, I don't recommend you to contact them again before the trial. There are many things to prepare in advance." To his surprise, Chen Guang shook his head. "No need. Let's go and collect evidence now. It's very important." Chen Guang cast a meaningful glance at the haggard Schultz in the distance and licked his lips silently. "My forced transaction. Well, it didn't cool down. But to make Schultz tell the truth, he didn't need to use such a high-level skill. Now he had a more energy-saving method. This was an inner strength technique that could search one's soul. It was one of the more than 400,000 martial arts techniques that he had mastered in the true martial land. He had integrated it into the true martial divine technique, but he could still use it. The name sounded domineering. Soul-snatching technique. In the real world, it wouldn't be as domineering as it was in the realm of true martial. It could completely control a person's mind. In the past, it was so weak that it could be ignored. It might not even be as good as a low-end hypnosis. But now that the power of the Holy Grail on Earth was getting stronger, Chen Guang didn't need to cultivate in the martial sage realm. He could naturally recover his strength along with the increasing power of the Holy Grail. The reason wasn't complicated. Cultivation in the realm of true martial relied on yin and yang qi. The power of the Holy Grail in the real world was far more original than yin and yang qi. Now that Chen Guang used this method to deal with Schultz, it was perfect. Mr. Schultz wasn't a tenacious person. Since the incident in the afternoon, he had been in a state of panic. Now Chen Guang planned to pretend to negotiate with him to make him lower his guard. Then he would knock down his guard and use the mind skill of an internal force master. "Mr. Schultz, let's have a talk." Together with Donder, Chen Guang stood in front of Schultz with a smile, looking like a weasel paying respects to a chicken. Chapter 1134. Schultz didn't know that Chen Guang was up to no good. Instead, he was overjoyed. He felt that God had opened his eyes. Of course, he knew about the response from the headquarters. This was good news for him. Even though he had been fired, as long as he could get rid of the racial discrimination charge, it wouldn't affect his future. As for the truth about the overselling incident, that wasn't important. This was a well-known secret in the airline industry. American Airlines had been attacked more than once because of this incident, but it didn't cause much of a stir. In fact, in Schultz's eyes, Officer Jack's Glock misfiring wasn't a big deal. Even though everyone knew that Jack must have had my support if he dared to pull out his gun, I didn't tell him to shoot over the phone. I can also check the phone records. Also, his Glock did misfire, he didn't intentionally shoot. In the United States, it was common for police officers to point their guns at suspects, or even passers-by. However, this time they happened to run into a celebrity, which made the situation more complicated. As long as they didn't admit to racial discrimination, everything could be controlled. Even though American Airlines couldn't run away with compensation, the airline company wasn't short on money, and neither was his father. Even though Chen Guang was asking for a lot of money, he could still afford it. He had Baker Law Firm, and American Airlines also had a large law firm that they had long-term cooperation with. As long as they didn't care about racial discrimination, the impact on the company was still acceptable. Of course, no matter how good the situation was, they could negotiate with Chen Guang in private to withdraw the lawyer's letter and withdraw the lawsuit. Then, with American Airlines' control over public opinion, it wouldn't take long for the impact of this incident to fade away, just like how they dealt with many negative news stories in the past. American Airlines was the most professional in the world when it came to public relations. Don't think that this matter will end just like that. I'll let you be proud for a while. Schultz looked at Chen Guang's smiling face and thought to himself. His mind was constantly thinking. It's all because you're a celebrity, but you used the privilege given to you by the Global Airlines Association to hide your identity and face, which led to this misunderstanding. How dare you try to force the entire airline to apologize to the Chinese? In your dreams. After this incident is over, American Airlines will make you pay sooner or later. Really? Mr. Chen, it's great that you're willing to talk. I'm really sorry about what happened before. Regardless of what he was thinking, Schultz's apologetic expression was perfect. With his acting skills, how could he hide it from Chen Guang? However, Chen Guang would not expose him on the spot. He also had a smile on his face. That's right. Let's find a quiet place to talk. Okay, then do I need to call the others? For example, our company's lawyer? No need. I'll call Donder. We don't need to talk too clearly. We just need to reach an agreement on some important points. Schultz thought to himself that Chen Guang's arrangement was right. What they were about to do next would be insider trading, and there was no need to let too many people know about it for the time being. Nielsen felt something was wrong. From Chen Guang's previous attitude, he had not sensed any sign of possible peace talks. But why did he suddenly change his mind? Mr. Schultz, how about Pierce and I accompany you? Nelson said tentatively. F***ck off. You two get away from us. It's all your fault that we had such a big misunderstanding with Mr. Chen. If they could settle Chen Guang privately, it would be a great contribution to the company. How could Schultz share the credit with others? Nielsen and Pierce were not stupid. Of course, they knew that Schultz wanted to leave the good deed to them. Even an idiot would know that if they didn't catch up now, Schultz would definitely use his father, who was a senior executive in the company, to play tricks and push all the blame onto them. No, Mr. Schultz, we're also involved in this incident. We also want to apologize to Mr. Chen. Nielsen decisively followed Schultz. Rolling his eyes, Chen Guang stopped Schultz from flipping out and said, "All right, the two of you can come as well." With more people from Meizhong Airlines involved, the footage would be more convincing. About 10 minutes later, Nielsen and Pierce were scared out of their wits. They stared blankly at Schultz, who was telling them all kinds of things with a serious face. There was only one thought in their minds. It's over, it's all over this time. Oversold? Come on, how could it be oversold? That's just an excuse we use to fool fools. Only fools will believe it. The entire North American airline industry knows that this is the conventional rule. Real oversold passengers can't even get on the plane. This time, it's just 4 American Airlines employees who decided to travel to Dachuan province of China. They seem to be planning to go to Zhezhegu in China. Yes, Zhezhegu. Schultz said with delight under the dumbfounded gazes of the other two. But this was not the end. He changed the subject again. This is not a very strange phenomenon in the entire airline industry. Our employees should be so noble, especially compared with the Chinese, who are like bugs. Of course we are nobler. Also, it's not a ridiculous random draw at all. What if we get a white man? What if we get a big shot? We usually call the name directly. If there's a Chinese, we pick a Chinese. If there's no Chinese, we pick another Asian. If there's no Chinese, we can only pick a black person who bought the special ticket. If you don't save the ridiculous ticket money and pay more money, of course, you can enjoy high-end service. All those paupers who bought the special price tickets should all get the hell out of our plane. Poor people don't deserve to enjoy the service of American Airlines. They are social parasites who devour our profits. Nielsen and Pierce thought that the head of the Los Angeles company might be crazy, especially Pierce, who wanted to tear this guy apart. They really wanted to jump up and stop his madness. If it weren't for Chen Guang sitting opposite them, staring at them maliciously, they would have done so. His fingers could pinch a bullet with his bare hands, and now the shriveled and deformed bullet was held in his fingers like a toy. No one wanted to experience the feeling of being poked by these two fingers. Mr. Schultz, isn't there a little problem with what you said? The brave black man Pierce interrupted him a little. He couldn't stand it anymore. But it was useless. If they didn't tie Schultz up, no one could stop him from using his eloquence. Is there any problem with what I said? No problem. I swear on my honor, on everything I've seen and heard in the years I've worked for American Airlines, and on my father's name, I swear that every word I've said is true. If there's any falsehood in my words, God will not forgive me. Pierce regretted it. How stupid was I to try to dissuade him. Now, not only did I dissuade him, but I also made him even more excited. This guy must have been possessed by Satan. Forget it, I'll just kill him. Chen Guang silently turned his face and looked at him as if he was looking at a dead fish. Be quiet, young man Pierce. The brawny black man Pierce gave up decisively. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot to mention that Officer Jack receives a bribe of $100,000 from me every year. He's one of my people. When necessary, he will provide enough power for American Airlines. When I authorized him, it actually meant that I allowed him to shoot and kill the Wuxia people. It's not strange. I've done this before. Killing some inferior human beings can help improve the quality of human beings. Nielsen and Pierce, the two junior staff members, were really crazy this time. On the other side, Qin Guang's soul-stealing finally lost its effect. Schultz's spiritual power was greatly impacted, and his eyes began to lose focus. Qin Guang knew that he was going to fall, so he hurriedly made a gesture to Donder and his assistant. The quick-witted assistant understood and turned off the recording device. In an extremely curious mood, Donder finally completed this incredible evidence collection process. As a white man, Donder could actually understand Schultz's mentality very well. It could even be said that many people in the United States had the same mentality as Schultz. However, no one had ever dared to voice out their thoughts, not even the people closest to them. This would make him a devil in others' hearts. Schultz's words represented the evilest side of a person's heart that should never be seen by others. On the other side, as Schultz slowly fell down, Qin Guang was not moved. He just turned around and asked Donder, "Is this evidence enough now?" Even though Donder was experienced and knowledgeable, he had never seen such a thing. After being stunned for a while, he recovered his wits and said, "Enough, far more than enough. If we investigate the other thing he said he had done before, besides making Mei Zhonghong pay a heavy price, he might also be put in jail." Qin Guang nodded. "Good. That's it. Let's go. Donder, please give me a copy of the video you just recorded. I'm going back to China now. I'll leave the rest to you, and I hope you can give me a satisfactory result." In front of Nelson and Donder, Donder glanced at Schultz sympathetically and then asked tentatively, "Mr. Qin, what if American Airlines pays a huge amount of compensation and wants to settle privately? I think their compensation will reach an astronomical figure." Until now, Donder still believed that Qin Guang would accept the peace negotiation with American Airlines. Now that he had obtained Schultz's heavy evidence, Qin Guang might just want to extract more benefits. When he had just taken over this case, considering Qin Guang's identity and the situation of the whole case, Donder had planned to settle privately with a compensation of nearly $100 million, which was twice the amount that the court might award. But now, after obtaining this video, he could directly propose a huge compensation of $150 million in the court and had a high probability of winning. Even if it couldn't reach this astronomical figure, it would definitely not be less than $100 million. Especially in Los Angeles, where there were Kobe Bryant, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and O'Neal, there were many black judges. The Chinese gangs in Los Angeles also had great influence. Schultz's words had almost made him half a step into hell. Then, the amount of the private settlement, which would hurt the Schultz family and American Airlines to the bone, would be as high as $300 million. In this world, no one could refuse this figure. Qin Guang first glanced at Nelson and Pierce, but didn't rush to answer. Donder thought that Qin Guang didn't want to talk in front of the people of American Airlines, so when they walked into the conference room he said in a low voice, "Mr. Qin, if it's a private settlement, I'm almost absolutely confident that the amount can be negotiated to more than $250 million. I know the wealth of the Schultz family and the economic power of American Airlines." Unexpectedly, Qin Guang asked another question. "What if the court compensates? How much can it be? If you really go to court, the damage to American Airlines' reputation will be beyond imagination. Their stock price will also plummet and the Schultz family will hate your guts. In the end, the court's compensation should only be between $100 million and $150 million. If you don't settle, go to court," Qin Guang said straightforwardly. "Okay." Lawyer Donder responded subconsciously and then suddenly reacted, "What? No settlement?" Qin Guang nodded, "Yes, no settlement, go to court. But the compensation will be," Qin Guang waved his hand, "who doesn't love money? But the difference of more than $100 million is nothing to me. Compared to changing the world because of this incident so that the Chinese can be treated more fairly, I'm willing to give up a single cent. Lawyer Donder, I have a belief in my heart and this is the real reason why I invited you." "What?" "I want the racists to pay the real price, the more painful the better. I want people of all colors to be treated fairly. I want all the unfairness in the world to be fair. I want the rich to be merciful. I want the poor to be able to live with dignity. This is the fundamental reason why I want to make it big this time." Donder was silent. As a lawyer, he had dealt with the law too many times, and had also done a lot of things to confuse black and white. He worked for whoever paid him and hired him. But this didn't prevent him from appreciating Qin Guang's idea. What a great person. No wonder this newly minted tycoon could achieve such unprecedented success in countless fields. Who would have thought that this young and famous Wuxia person would have such a great mindset? "Mr. Qin, I understand. Don't worry, I'll make American Airlines pay a painful price. That's good. Thank you and Baker Law Firm for your help. This is what we should do. Then goodbye. I'll come back when we go to court. Chen Guang waved to Donder, then turned around and went to the VIP lounge. Donder didn't notice that the moment he turned around, Chen Guang staggered. Chapter 1135. Chen Guang rubbed his temples calmly. He used soul snatching on Schultz for too long just now. In order to achieve a better effect, he used too much strength. In this world, anything that involved the human heart was not simple. The cultivation method at the level of the mind was indeed extraordinary. The soul-snatching spell consumed a lot of the caster's body. No wonder Lioli was always reluctant when Chen Guang wanted to enjoy the help of Lioli's god-level hypnosis. Letting her use this move once was equivalent to taking her life. In the past, Chen Guang always felt that Lioli was bragging when she said that using this trick consumed a lot of divine power. After all, there were hypnosis masters on Earth, at least he often saw them on the internet. Moreover, Lioli had a precedent of being lazy and tricking people. It was just that later, Chen Guang mastered the forced PY transaction himself, so he didn't need Lioli's god-level hypnosis so much. He gradually didn't count on it anymore. Finally, now that he tried the soul-snatching with a similar effect, he knew that it was really costly to tempt people. The forced PY transaction of the heavenly Holy Grail was always successful, but it was the power of the Holy Grail after all. God knew how much energy the Holy Grail consumed every time it created a world in a cup, which was equivalent to recreating a world. The same thing would be completely different if it was done by manpower or Lioli, who had limited abilities. Human science had been developing until now, and more diseases had been conquered, but there was no way to deal with psychological diseases. The theory of brainwaves, telepathy, and the soul was still metaphysical, and it still couldn't be explained by scientific methods. There were still countless controversies and conjectures about the theory of the development of the human brain. There were rumors that the average development of the human brain was only about 10%. If it could reach 20% or 34%, 80%, 90%, or even 100%, it was beyond imagination to what extent the human brain, spirit, and even the level of thinking could reach. Countless people speculated in their hearts that if the human brain could run at full capacity like the CPU of a computer, what kind of incredible ability would it have? There was only one reason for such speculation. The brain and the thinking level were too profound and complex. Some scientists believed that the so-called 90% of the human brain might not be completely asleep, but it was still continuously releasing bioelectricity. It was just that the degree and activity of the bioelectricity was not as high as the other 10%. From a biological point of view, the 10% theory might not be completely accurate. However, from the perspective of mental power, and from the extent of development of mental power by inner force martial artists such as Chen Guang, the potential of human mental power was indeed limitless. But there was also a new problem. Just like when we use a computer, a small CPU and graphics chip takes up more than 90% of the computer's power consumption, and so on. The high-speed operation of the brain also puts a huge burden on the human body. When the human brain was operating at high speed, it consumed the energy in the human body, namely adenosine triphosphate, which was obtained from the decomposition of glucose, at an extremely fast rate. The brain only took up 2% of a human's body weight, but it consumed 20% of oxygen and 75% of the blood sugar stored in the liver. The most obvious example was that when an ordinary person emptied their brain or slept for an entire afternoon, they would not feel particularly hungry even if it was between lunch and dinner. However, if this ordinary person was a senior high school student, after eating lunch and entering the college entrance examination room, he would feel hungry the moment he walked out of the examination room after a short 2 hours of intense thinking. There were many similar phenomena, which often occurred in all aspects of ordinary people's work and studies. The reason was that the brain consumed too much energy. Therefore, if all parts of the brain or even more parts were to operate at full speed, the energy consumption should increase linearly. It was very likely that the lunch that a person had just eaten would be wasted in a few minutes. In addition, the process of high-speed energy transmission would also bring great pressure to the human body's blood and other functions. It was like asking an ordinary car that cost more than 100,000 yuan to run for a long time to 200 kilometers per hour. Even if the fuel could keep up, the load limit of the machine would be exceeded, and the car would overturn. It was also like using an old computer with the copy software on for a long time. After a long time, it would either blue screen burn the north-south bridge, or directly burn the CPU. There would always be something burning. Chen Guang used to be an ordinary person, but now he was no longer ordinary. He was the world's strongest internal force martial artist, and he had the peerless divine ability to actively develop mental power. This so-called mental power development, in essence, was actually his own brain operating at a level that exceeded the limits of ordinary people, creating psychological pressure on the other party from the mental level, and thus changing the other party's thinking. Although Qin Guang couldn't find a scientific theory to give him a reasonable explanation for the so-called spiritual plane, and Liuli had never talked about it with him either. However, Qin Guang often wondered if this was the brain waves released after his brain operated at high speed, which could affect other people's brains. Or could it be the so-called invasion of the biological magnetic field? Now that his body was strong enough, when he used the soul-snatching art, he not only consumed the food in his stomach, but also the internal force in his dantian, and the mental power accumulated in his brain from practicing the true martial divine art. This method of accumulating spiritual energy was extremely bizarre, and even Qin Guang couldn't give an explanation for it. Even if he had learned 400,000 martial arts, he still couldn't explain it. He knew that these things were stored in his brain like seawater, and he could use them when needed, but he did not know the principle behind it, and could only treat himself as a rechargeable lithium battery. First, he used the true martial divine art to store energy, and then released it like a battery discharging. As for the changes that happened to his body, he did not know why. This was something that had always bothered Qin Guang. This was the real reason why he was willing to let Tang Ying study his genes. When he was weak, he was very selfish in order to protect himself. However, ever since he became the #1 martial artist in history, Qin Guang had a lot less scruples, and he was willing to let others try to explore his secrets. As Tang Ying said, if he could do something for the evolution of the entire human race by studying himself, Qin Guang felt that there was nothing wrong with it. It was easy to say, but if it was anyone else, even if they had a little bit of selfishness, they would never be as generous as he was. Qin Guang felt that no matter what the future held, no matter how high he could stand after he became the owner of the Holy Grail, and no matter if he could really survive the Holy Grail's test forever, he was still alive, and he would do as much as he could. Now that he had such power and stood at such a high level, he should do more. Even if he died in the 3,000 worlds of trials, he would not have too many regrets if he could leave something for the world before he died. This was the reason why Qin Guang was trying to get involved in the environmental protection industry, and also why he wanted to eliminate racial discrimination and improve the status of the Chinese people through the American Airlines incident. He never flaunted his greatness and sometimes even seemed childish. However, unknowingly, some of the things he did according to his heart had slowly become truly great. It was just that many people could not understand, and would never be able to understand the height of his thinking. Just like this time, many people would probably secretly say that he was narrow-minded, making a mountain out of a molehill, and unreasonable, saying that he was just taking the opportunity to extort a sum of money from American Airlines. However, what was particularly awkward about Qin Guang was that although he had a good reputation, he did not like to explain it to others. Perhaps even he himself did not know what kind of height he was standing at. He was still immersed in his own deceit. After all, in a sense, it was because of him that the whole world, the whole universe was about to be dragged down with him. He was also carrying a huge debt of faith points that he could not pay back at all. He was busy trying to survive, and in the process he tried to do as much as he could. He did not want to admit his fear, but in fact he hoped that if he failed, he, Qin Guang, would not have come to this world for nothing. He did not acknowledge the worldview of those old men like Lin Jingwei's grandfather. Those people's theory of ruling a country was like being a chef did not fit his personality. He had his own worldview. He was trying to make the world a better place through his own hands and power. Now, there were signs that things were going to get worse, but this was not something he could control. He could only brace himself and wait for that day to come, and before that, quickly make himself stronger. Passing the world within a cup would make him stronger. Obtaining a divine statue would make him stronger. Increasing the production of faith would also make him stronger. Continuously absorbing the earth elemental energy floating in the air would also make him stronger. Doing some things to increase his reputation in the world, or even simply paying off his faith debt, were all ways for him to become stronger. In this aspect, it had to be said that Lin Jingwei had an inconceivable vision and passion. He knew Qin Guang's personality too well. To put it simply, the more capable he was, the more he wanted to do for the world. This could be said to be stupid or childish, but it was also the most charming part of Qin Guang. Like this time, in order to give Mei Zhonghong a head-on blow, he even used a move that he had never used on anyone before. With his current skills and realm, using it on an ordinary person once already made him feel as though his brain had been hollowed out. This feeling was like a person who had no tolerance for alcohol but had drunk 2 tails of wine. Mother, I'm going to complain. Those hypnotists on television are all F***king liars. They're all liars. In fact, Qin Guang had misunderstood hypnosis. Real hypnosis basically led the subject into a state of self-hypnosis through a long period of psychological suggestion, slowly awakening the inner consciousness under the surface consciousness, and then achieving the effect of a strong illusion. However, Qin Guang and Lu Li's God-level hypnosis was very simple and crude in nature. Through super strong mental pressure, they could forcibly influence the thoughts of others for a short period of time. This was essentially different from real hypnosis. How's it going? What's wrong? Are you okay? Seeing Qin Guang walk back unsteadily, Tang Ying was shocked when she saw Qin Guang's pale face and asked hurriedly. Qin Guang waved his hand. I'm fine. Let's get on the plane and get ready to go back. I'm a little tired. 10 minutes later, the moment they got on the plane, Qin Guang tilted his head and fell asleep on Tang Ying's shoulder. There were no other passengers in the cabin of the plane. After delivering coffee and lunch to Qin Guang, the flight attendants of China Airlines restrained the impulse to ask him for his autograph when they saw that Qin Guang was resting. Thus, they turned around and left silently, leaving the entire cabin to Qin Guang and Lu Li. On the other side, after returning to the Los Angeles headquarters of his firm, Donder decided to directly release the video of Schultz that he had recorded before. Since Qin Guang didn't want to negotiate and only wanted to go to court. In that case, there was no need to hide this most important piece of evidence. If he directly released it, he would have an overwhelming advantage in public opinion and give Mei Zhonghong a fatal blow. That night, with the announcement and crazy dissemination of this video, Mei Zhonghong suffered the most serious head-on blow in its history. Today, after the news broke out in the afternoon, the stock of American Airlines experienced a brief plunge. It almost fell to the trading limit of the stock market. Undoubtedly, when the Nasdaq stock market reopened tomorrow morning, Mei Zhonghong's stock would fall to the trading halt in a few minutes. A listed company was stripped of its skin and thrown into a naked scandal. God knew how many days Mei Zhonghong's stock would fall. In this video, almost every point that the CEO of Mei Zhonghong had resisted was completely refuted. That's right, it wasn't oversold. It was their own employee who wanted to take a plane and decided to do so on a whim. Their random selection was too high-end. It was just a child's play. This was outright racial discrimination. He even said that killing some lowly inferior human beings can help improve the quality of human beings, which was an unforgivable crime. He had even done such a thing. He was simply a devil in a suit and tie. Such an extreme racist was a senior member of your company, and his father was a member of the board of directors. Without an even more extreme father, how could such a crazy son be raised? You didn't just discriminate, you even tried to kill. Your company was standing on the opposite side of all human beings. That night, the unprecedented national boycott came so abruptly. Schultz's terrible remarks were even unacceptable to Europeans and Americans, not to mention the Asians who had been discriminated against in Europe and the United States for many years, especially in the face of the airlines. Of course, the black people who were becoming more and more influential in America wouldn't let them go. This situation caught everyone in Mei Zhonghong by surprise. The CEO of Mei Zhonghong tried frantically to contact Qin Guang, but he couldn't get through. He then contacted Donder, but Donder still didn't show any signs of negotiation. Idiot. This was a problem that could have been solved in private, but because of your arrogance, it caused this unmanageable outcome. You could have just apologized to the Chinese people. Now it's over, it's all over. Schultz, your son is a devil. He must pay the price and you must pay the price too. At the board meeting that was held that night, the CEO was scolded by the board of directors. Old Schultz was in a miserable situation and he didn't know what to do. But Qin Guang didn't care how his decision would affect Mei Zhonghong. He was still lying on the plane, leaning on Tang Ying's thigh and sleeping soundly. In fact, his current position was a bit awkward, and it was certainly not as comfortable as lying down on the chair. But if he let go of this legitimate opportunity to take advantage of Tang Ying, then he wouldn't be Qin Guang. At this time he was sleeping soundly. He didn't know that the outside world was shaking violently because of this night's uproar, and some unexpected changes had taken place. Outside, with a series of disturbances, dozens of videos of Qin Guang catching bullets with his bare hands once again swept the world. Previously, the other passengers on the plane had recorded the process of him catching bullets with his bare hands from various angles. Because everything happened too fast, ordinary mobile phones couldn't capture the whole process as clearly as high-speed cameras, but the scene of the bullet's complete deformation was extremely clear. Countless people kept speculating in their hearts, what kind of a pair of fingers could actually clamp a Glock bullet so tightly? How fast did Qin Guang's reaction speed have to be able to catch the bullet in such an awkward position at that critical moment? Is he still human? In just a few hours, Qin Guang's name and his two invincible fingers of God, which made many women go crazy, completely blew up the screen and attracted the attention of everyone in the world. Because of this incident, the number of people who knew Qin Guang's name instantly multiplied from 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion? The exact number couldn't be calculated, but it didn't matter. Regardless of whether it was in Wuxia or abroad, as long as there was the internet or television news, anyone could tell that there was a Wuxia person called Qin Guang. Eliminating discrimination might still be a long-term problem in the world, but it was precisely because of the heavy responsibility that this matter had become politically correct in the world. For a long time, Qin Guang had been accumulating his own fame, proving himself in various fields and gaining more people's recognition. He had been accumulating his fame bit by bit, waiting for the day when he would become famous. Now, because of this crazy Olympiad that attracted the attention of the world, and that he had succeeded a few months earlier, his name had resounded in the sky again and again. Now that the god of acting was done, he did something else that attracted the attention of the world without stopping. People were always good at forgetting, just like stars were always outdated. But at least today, in these few hours, Qin Guang's fame had reached its peak. In Los Angeles, outside the Wuxia Theater in Hollywood, and outside the Baroque building of the Motion Picture Association, numerous people of Chinese, Asian, and even Black and Native American descent had spontaneously come to the square under the cover of night. Not only were they supporting Qin Guang, but they're also protesting against American Airlines. At the same time, they're also making use of this opportunity to cry out for the discrimination that they've suffered over the years. Standing under the newly completed bronze statue of Qin Guang, they raised their arms high and shouted his name. They loudly repeated what Qin Guang had said to Donder the lawyer, and what Donder had said at the press conference just now. May people of all colors be treated fairly. May all the unfairness in the world become fair. Standing in front of the bronze statue of Qin Guang, which represented the end of acting, people who had suffered discrimination and indifference in life had unknowingly become fanatics with this fanatical atmosphere. Light green threads of faith value shot up into the sky in front of Qin Guang's bronze statue, flying straight to the sky and toward the flight of China Airlines that was flying in the sky. The integration of the real world and the real world was still advancing at a stable speed, and the power of the Holy Grail that filled the whole world had never stopped growing stronger. At this moment, in the depths of the distant and boundless universe, a loud sound like glass breaking penetrated the endless void. A crack slowly opened, and a beam of light that was countless times hotter than the sun was emitted from the edge of the crack. If anyone could stand outside the universe and look at this universe that looked like a duck's egg, they would clearly see that it trembled at this moment. Chapter 1136. The shock was too sudden, too violent. For Qin Guang, perhaps the moment he opens his eyes again, the entire world will become unfamiliar. But for other people in this world, they won't notice anything at all. Just like a fish kept in a fish tank, the fish tank has been moved from the living room to the bedroom, but the fish doesn't notice anything at all. Humans laugh at fish for only having 7 seconds of memory, but they don't know that their so-called long lives may not even be as long as 7 seconds in the eyes of the gods. Or in other words, all living creatures in the universe are like fish in a fish tank. The universe was like a huge fish tank. Qin Guang used to sympathize with the ordinary people in the transient sea. They will forever live in the hopeless cage of the transient sea created by the Transcendent's Holy Grail. But because the realm of transient sea's own laws were not perfect, those who became sea emperor-level powerhouses in the transient sea would realize that their world was a cage, and would want to break free. But Qin Guang's reality is different. Furthermore, the level of the real world that is fusing with the real world is higher than the transient sea. Simply put, the transient sea is only the 8th level of the Transcendent's Holy Grail, while the real world is one of the highest level special worlds in the Transcendent's Holy Grail. Its rules and worldview are perfect, even flawless, unlike the transient sea which has many loopholes. Therefore, in the current universe, other than Qin Guang who already knows the answer, no other person or creature, no matter how advanced their technology is, no matter how powerful they are, they can't become the fish that jumps out of the fish tank. Even if they understand this, they will never be able to find the answer, let alone prove that this matter is correct. How can a person in eternal darkness prove the principle of refraction of light? In the transient sea, because of the loopholes and imperfections of the world's rules, perhaps one or two beams of light from the outside world will occasionally be captured by ocean emperor-level powerhouses, causing them to doubt their own world. But in the real universe, it is truly eternal darkness. People in the real world are like this: they won't notice anything, they will only feel that everything is as it is. Or perhaps they can use their imagination to speculate, but they will never be able to find scientific support and proof. They couldn't prove their own existence, but they couldn't deny the truth of themselves either. At this moment, Qin Guang's real world had become the fish tank that had been moved from the living room to the bedroom. The laws of the two planes merging had silently changed everything from the past to the present, and then to the future, including the memories of all sentient beings in this world. Humans simply could not deny themselves. Just like the ancients, if you tried to explain to them that the earth was spherical and that the earth revolved around the sun, they would think that you were crazy. Qin Guang, who was quietly lying in the first-class cabin of Wuxia Airlines Flight CA97832, knew nothing about what was happening outside. At this moment, he was immersed in an extremely deep sleep that he hadn't enjoyed for a long time. He didn't know what was going on, nor did he know what was going on. But his deep sleep wasn't sweet. He sometimes frowned, sometimes struggled, and when it was serious, he even unconsciously clawed and scratched. Fortunately, deep in his sleep, he subconsciously knew that he wasn't in danger, so he didn't circulate his internal energy in a state of unconscious, nor did he deliberately increase his strength, so he didn't cause too much trouble to Tang Ying, who was still leaning on his thigh. It was just that this kid's hand would occasionally touch something that shouldn't be touched, causing Tang Ying to blush, a little embarrassed. Fortunately, this was a private plane for the two of them, and there were no other passengers in the first-class cabin. If other people saw this, they would think that the two of them were unable to control themselves, regardless of the occasion and place, doing some shameful things. Tang Ying blushed and slapped away Qin Guang's devil's claw that was desperately rubbing his C cup, and secretly cursed, "You bastard, are you pretending to be asleep or are you really asleep? Can you be more obedient with that hand of yours?" Qin Guang didn't move, but continued to smack his lips, and fell into a temporary silence. Seeing him like this, Tang Ying sighed, "Forget it, I forgive you. You're probably too tired, aren't you? I can't believe that a kid like you has such a weak side. You also have nightmares?" Although psychology wasn't Tang Ying's specialty, she had more or less learned a little in Moorlands. At this time, Qin Guang's behavior was reflected in pathology, but it was a sign that he was in a deep sleep, and he was probably still dreaming, and it wasn't a good dream. In the past, Tang Ying thought that Qin Guang's heart was made of iron, but now, it was a rare eye-opener, and she consciously discovered his weakness. But this was good because it showed that no matter how high his status became or how famous he became, he was still the same guy in the past. Tang Ying lowered her head to look at Qin Guang's face on her thigh, and her mind was momentarily at a loss. Time flew, and her memory seemed to have returned to the first day she met this kid. That day she was drunk and only vaguely remembered that she seemed to have slapped him, called him a stinky pervert, and scolded him for trying to molest her. Actually, she had completely forgotten about it. At that time he was clearly booking a car online, and she was the one who called for his car. I think I even vomited in his car. That kid, Qin Guang, must have been furious at that time, right? She really didn't expect that just a chance encounter would bring her to meet such an extraordinary man. Fate was really too wonderful for words. There were countless coincidences in life, but 99% of them could only be passers-by. Every 10,000 coincidences, there would only be one acquaintance, and every 100 acquaintances, there would only be one friend. Out of 100 ordinary friends, only one could become a bosom friend. To be able to meet this kid, Qin Guang, was really 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Tang Ying's face still hung a warm smile, and her eyes were filled with warmth. It was obvious that she was thinking that even if there was no real possibility between her and Qin Guang, to be able to become a companion in scientific research and in the journey of life, wasn't it a kind of happiness? But the words that she was muttering in her heart were indeed 8 lifetimes of bad luck. What was even more unbelievable was that at that moment, the black business suit that she was originally wearing today had suddenly turned into a loose white dress without any warning. This change was simply seamless and unimaginable. She didn't even realize that there was nothing strange about it at all. However, this wasn't the only change. Tang Ying's originally perky C-cup chest had now become Mount Everest. That's right, the legendary F-cup had appeared on her body. For a normal woman to suddenly change from a C-cup to an F-cup, how would she react? Crazy? Screaming? Terrified? Ecstatic? Suddenly oppressed to the point where it was difficult to breathe? No, none of the above had happened. She was still as calm as ever, as if nothing had happened. Tang Ying was still looking at Qin Guang's face as she muttered to herself, "Qin Guang, what are you thinking about, chick?" As she spoke, Qin Guang finally opened his eyes slowly. He was in a daze for a few seconds before he abruptly sat up straight and shook his head frantically. Qin Guang's face was pale. He had just had a super scary nightmare. It was simply unimaginable and made him feel like he was on the verge of breaking down. He had dreamt China had become the world's most powerful country. It had become his impression of America, the world's policeman who interfered with the political ecology of other countries. Well, this was a good thing. However, the thing that Qin Guang couldn't accept the most were the other small things. That's right, it was the small things that were everywhere in life. For example, he was clearly in the first-class cabin, but the ticket stated that he was in the luggage compartment. The first-class cabin had become the luggage compartment. And the real luggage compartment, of course, didn't have a ticket, but the flight attendant said that it was the first-class cabin. But this wasn't enough for him to break down. Driving in China had become driving on the left, while the steering wheel in China was on the right. Men weren't called Mr. but Miss or Sister. Day wasn't called day but night. The sun wasn't called sun but moon. Oh right, on the plane that he was on now, the plane was called a train, and the ticket wasn't a plane ticket but a train ticket. Basically, all the antonyms that could be thought of in life had become the opposite. Everything that could be reversed in life was turned into another concept. In Qin Guang's nightmare, his dad, Qin Guoli, corrected him with a serious face. "Silly girl, are you crazy? This is the first time I'm warning you, don't call me dad, call me mom. Really, you're getting smarter as you live. You can't even differentiate between a man and a woman?" Well, that first time actually meant the last time. Qin Guang felt like he was about to break down. Then he ran into Wenwen in the nightmare, and was dragged into an internet cafe by Wenwen. She actually made him play LOL and not Dota. She even said that although there were many people playing such a rubbish game like Dota, the Chinese teams had long been beaten up by the Koreans internationally. People with faith would play LOL. Was China's way of fighting the world. Qin Guang felt like he was about to break down. Then he woke up from the nightmare with sweat all over his head, feeling that everything was too terrifying. This nightmare was too real, but when everyone in the dream was faced with something that he couldn't accept or even think was inconceivable, their reactions were so logical. It seemed like he was the one who had gone crazy. Qin Guang had imagined countless situations that he might face after the real world and the real world completely merged. But even if the sky was about to fall, since it was his own fault, he had no intention of running away. He only wanted to use his own strength to face it bravely. But if it became such a world, it meant that the worldview that he had cultivated since he was young would be reversed. God knows how difficult it would be to keep up with others again, and how awkward it would be for him to live. That scene, just thinking about it, made him so disgusted that he wanted to hang himself to death. Alright, there was one more thing that was especially scary. Sister Tang Ying, who was a standard C cup, had actually become the scary F cup. The size of a basketball. Well, a basketball was exaggerated, but it was similar to a slightly inflated volleyball. In short, it was terrifying. Qin Guang recalled that terrifying scene again, then shook his head violently, trying to wake himself up completely so that he could escape from the nightmare as soon as possible. As a man, although he liked big ones, the F cup was a little too big. "Qin Guang, you stinky girl, what were you thinking about when you were awake just now? Look at how calm you are." Tang Ying turned her head from the side, looking at him with a puzzled expression as she asked. Qin Guang was oblivious and waved his hand. "No, nothing, Sister Tang Ying." "Wait a minute." Qin Guang suddenly froze, feeling that there was something wrong with Tang Ying's words. "Qin Guang, you little girl. When you were awake, what were you thinking about? Calm and collected?" Poor Master Guang swallowed hard, his brain going through a few twists and turns before he could completely digest Tang Ying's words. Let me calm down and translate. What Sister Tang Ying said should be, "Qin Guang, you stinky brat, what did you dream about when you were asleep just now? Look at how scared you were." That should be it. What was the scariest thing in the world? It was like having an unimaginable nightmare, and when he woke up, he found that the nightmare had become a reality. At this moment, Qin Guang's feelings could be summed up in 3 words. That could only be it. *CKME. With his last hope, Qin Guang looked at Tang Ying anxiously. "Sister Tang Ying, what did you just say? Please say it again." Then he despaired. On one hand, Tang Ying slapped him hard on the head, angrily rebuking, "You're awake now, aren't you? Call me brother Tang Ying. I'm such a handsome young man, Don't you feel disgusted if you call me Sister Tang Ying? Wake up your ass, you're clearly in a daze from sleep. No, I'm not in a daze either. I'm very awake now. I've never been this awake in my life. On the other hand, Qin Guang saw the two terrifying F-cups the size of papayas swaying in front of her chest when Tang Ying slapped him. She really became an F-cup. Oh right, the black suit she was wearing previously had now turned into a white dress. Qin Guang despaired. What I just had wasn't a dream, it was all F*King real. He silently covered his face, then turned his head to look out of the cabin window beside him, concentrating a little to communicate with the outside world. At this moment he finally realized that the power of the Holy Grail between heaven and earth was at least several times denser than before he fell asleep. Through the Holy Grail, he felt the chaotic rules and conditions of heaven and earth. Finally, Qin Guang was certain of this cruel reality. Although he didn't know what exactly happened, nor did he know the reason or principle behind it, but in the short 2 to 3 hours he was sleeping on the plane, the world had changed. Oh, that's not right, it shouldn't be on the plane, it should be on the train or the air-breathing car. F***, I'm about to break down. What's with this antonym? Everything has been reversed, it's completely messed up. This world has become completely foreign to me. No, the world is still the world I'm familiar with, but I'm the only one who's F***king on the opposite side of the world. Others definitely won't notice anything wrong, so in the eyes of others, I'm the only one who's sober. No, it should be the only one who's sober? F***, I'm really going crazy. Qin Guang couldn't help but stare straight at Tang Ying's F-cup, then yelled, F***, I'm going crazy. Tang Ying was startled by his furious expression. Qin, why are you suddenly so happy? Don't be like that, forget it, just call me Sister Tang Ying, really? Qin Guang's face was covered in tears. I'm happy, I'm angry, you're all over my face. Brother Tang? I'm not angry, oh no, I'm not happy. I'm just too confused. Oh no, too awake. Qin Guang turned his face away fiercely, feeling that he could barely speak. I want to die. Oh no, according to the current concept, I just want to live. So F***king crazy. At this moment, the flight attendant heard Qin Guang's shout and quickly walked out from behind the curtain. Miss Qin, what's wrong? Do you need any help? Qin Guang silently pushed his hands. That's right, I need help. No, I need help. Forget it, don't talk to me, I just want to be quiet. Don't ask me who I am, it's now. On the other side, Tang Ying tried to smooth things over for Qin Guang with a smile. There's something. Qin just woke up, she's a little dizzy. Qin Guang didn't want to speak at all, nor could he. The flight attendant looked at Qin Guang again. Is that so? Then Miss Qin, do you need a cup of coffee? Qin Guang also felt that he needed to drink water to calm himself down. He took out his cup and handed it to the flight attendant. Help me, no, don't give it to me. Anyway, 1 cup. Pour it out of my cup. I don't want coffee. I want. Forget it, give me some tea. No tea. Anyway, tea. The female flight attendant looked at Qin Guang with a completely confused look. Oh. Tang Ying also felt that Qin Guang was very awkward. Forget it, don't ignore him. Give me a cup of cappuccino. Looking at the back of the female flight attendant turning away, Qin Guang was confused. Cappuccino, tea. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.